way, it looks a lot better. Look at that. Oop, music stopped. Nope. Hush your mouth. Well. Sam, you're always the first to like everything. Why is my screen blurry? Thank you. My screen's very blurry right now, and I wish I could fix it. But it's kind of... So, I'm gonna put on some scary stories to listen to chill with, while I draw, just to help me focus, because royalty-free music does not help me that much. So, yeah.
This is a story I haven't thought about in a long time, and for good reason. My friends and I used to like exploring things. Growing up in New Jersey, there were enough abandoned places within driving distance to keep us entertained for hours. A lot of the stuff we did wasn't all that cool in hindsight. Just decaying buildings, empty warehouses, stuff like that. But every now and then, we'd stumble across something more interesting. One place that had been on our radar for a while was an abandoned middle school about a 30-minute drive away. I won't say the name here for privacy reasons, but anyone familiar with North Jersey urban exploring probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. We'd seen photos of the place online and figured it was finally time to check it out. It was late summer, and we were getting bored of the usual activities, which mostly consisted of playing basketball in my backyard and driving around aimlessly. I can't remember who brought up the idea, but it was a pretty spontaneous thing. There were 4 of us that night. It was me, Yuri, Frank, and Freddie. Frank and I were into graffiti, so we brought a few cans of black and white spray paint. Beyond that, the rest of my bag was filled with some Roman candles I had left over from 4th of July. Our MO with these kinds of things was always the same. We'd mess around inside, get to the roof, shoot some fireworks off, then sprint down before any cops rolled up. This evening would be no different.
What joy to
Yuri
get out
was
of that.
driving that night. He pulled onto a side street a few blocks from the school, and we got out. We made our way towards the school, and were pleasantly surprised to see that the fence around the perimeter had been cut.
Oh yes,
We were
that's a
prepared
good...
to jump,
That's a good sign.
but I was glad we wouldn't have to. The school was huge, bigger than the pictures online had led us to believe.
I don't know why this
It
is
would
like
have
a jelly
taken
bean
forever
to
to
me.
explore the whole thing, but that was a good thing, as the 4 of us were prone to get bored very quickly. Frank led the way through the hole, followed by Yuri, then me, then Freddie.
God, her earring's ginormous. Hold
Freddie
on.
was the most fearless, so he volunteered to bring up the rear. We found a door that wasn't boarded up and stepped inside.
Yes, this is
Even
all
with our
such a good idea
flashlights
in this
in the
story.
Picture your childhood school, only dead silent. Every hallway was stripped down to exposed wires and crumbling tile.
No, ma'am.
Insulation was hanging from the ceiling, and there were bits of broken furniture everywhere.
People are
The
stupid.
entrance we found opened into a hallway, which we happily began walking through after clicking on our flashlights. We all had really powerful flashlights, which was something we were very proud of for whatever reason. When I say powerful, I mean it. Mine was $60 and could illuminate an entire room with a beam strong enough to blind you for a few seconds if you mistakenly glanced at it.
Okay.
It was honestly a lot of money for a flashlight, but I thought it was worth it. The walls were coated in graffiti, some of it good, some of it awful.
Oh shit.
Frank and I paused here and there to check out a few tags, but mostly we kept moving. I'll spare you most of the details about the building itself, but it was honestly really cool. Seeing all those seats and a stage that was literally falling apart was a dope sight. We made a quick loop through the basement, which was by far the most rundown part of the school. We didn't spend much time down there, partly because of the wear, but mostly because I could tell my friends were getting creeped out. One of the rooms had a massive pentagram painted on the floor, which wasn't
Good
exactly a
sign.
comforting sight. creepy, yeah, but it wasn't unusual. Anyone who's done
Yeah, would you like to say hi? Yes, you brought your hair tie? Yes, you did. Come here, baby. Hold on. Come here. I know you don't like me holding you. Come here. Come here. No. Never mind, she hates me. She hates being held, but she likes climbing on your face, so. I sneezed. Good job. Good job.
exploring, there was these pop up everywhere. We didn't linger. The four of us eventually made our way to the second floor. One of the classrooms had a completely untouched white wall,
You didn't
basically
leave
a
at the
blank
pentagram?
canvas. Frank and I grinned and started throwing paint up, while Yuri and Freddie said they were going to keep exploring and look for a way to the roof. They disappeared down one of the dark hallways, while we stayed back, tagging. Once we wrapped up our piece, Frank wanted to keep working on another section of the wall. I wandered out of the room to check out some of the better artwork along the nearby corridors.
The better artwork.
After about 5 minutes of just standing and admiring the art, I heard Frank yell out from behind me. He sounded angry and asked if I was messing with him. I told him I don't know what he was talking about, and he told me to quit the act, still angry. Before I could figure out what he meant, he said, "I know you took my bag." I swore I didn't do anything, that I had been standing in the hallway the entire time. He believed me and muttered something about how it must have been Freddie. To be fair, it was the type of thing Freddie had a tendency to do. We searched the room with our lights just to be safe.
Oh,
but
sorry.
there was nothing. The bag was gone. We couldn't do much more tagging without the bag since it had all the unused paint in it. So we just went to find the guys, who we assumed were on the roof by then.
God, I gotta
We went
fix
as far
these
up
or
as the
something.
stairs would take us, but unfortunately, they didn't lead to the roof. We wandered the floor aimlessly, checking various rooms for a way to the roof. At one point, I walked into a small side room and froze. There on the wall was another pentagram, like the one we had seen in the basement, only this one was much more ominous. It was freshly painted, which I could tell because paint was still dripping down it.
Oh, God.
In the corner of the room was Frank's bag, just sitting there. Frank stepped into the room behind me and immediately noticed.
YouTube, come on. Shut
I
up.
was looking at. Without skipping a beat, he grabbed his bag off the floor
Oh,
and
thank
said
you.
in a pretty loud voice, "What the hell is wrong with him?" I
Huh?
didn't respond. Even as a joke, it seemed like something that crossed the line a little too much, even for Freddie. We
Yeah.
left the room and started walking down a random hallway in silence, just wanting to find our friends. Just then, we heard rapid footsteps thundering towards us.
Oh, hell no.
It was Freddie and Yuri, who motioned for us to follow them. We didn't even have time to be pissed at Freddie. We just ran. Here's a good rule to live by. If someone tells you to run, you don't stand around and ask questions.
Yeah,
It's
pretty
just plain
much.
stupid.
Yeah.
As we ran, Yuri tried to explain what was going on, but I couldn't really understand him over all the noise. All I gathered was that we were running from someone, most likely multiple people. The four of us tried to find our way back to the exit, but it was a literal maze in there, especially given the circumstances.
Shoes are weird.
Eventually, we stopped to catch our breath at a corner in what felt like a completely different wing of the building. We all agreed that if we just found a random stairwell and went down, we'd eventually find a way out. It didn't sound like there was anyone chasing us, so we decided to move slowly and just be as quiet as possible. After finding a stairwell, we went down a couple floors. Once we got to what we all agreed was the ground floor, we started walking through the hallway, thinking we were in the clear. But just then, this sharp hissing noise rang out from somewhere in front of us. A steady, sharp hissing. That's the best way I can describe it. It sounded like someone trying to imitate a cat. The four of us froze, hoping that whoever was down there didn't notice us. But as we were slowly and quietly retreating back the way we had come, a deep voice said something from beyond the darkness in front of us. He said, word for word, "I should have cut you when I had the chance." We didn't wait another second. We just ran. This time, I could actually hear several sets of footsteps behind us.
Oh my
These
God,
things 10
really?
times scarier than they had been before.
So I know they're about to die, but like,
I've
really?
seen things behind us. Stuff about how
do
they
you
were
draw
gonna kill us
shoes?
and how they had all the exits covered. It was the scariest moment of my life. I thought we were gonna have to run back upstairs and hide somewhere in the building. But somehow, Yuri took a turn at the right moment, and up ahead, we saw the original door we'd come through. We kept running, even after making it outside, then through the fence and all the way back to Yuri's car. Yuri drove off, and even though we all looked back at the school,
Yuri's like, hell
there
no.
wasn't much we could make out on account of how dark it was. We weren't sticking around, though. As we were driving
Wouldn't
away,
you leave at the first
Freddie told us
pentagram?
their side of the story. He said that after they failed to find a way to the roof, they had gone down a floor to look for us. Apparently, Freddie started hearing weird metallic clinking coming from one of the rooms, which he assumed was us. He and Yuri walked inside and saw 3 cloaked figures sitting in a circle, hunched over something on the floor. According to Freddie, it looked like they were playing some kind of game with glass marbles or stones.
Isn't it
As soon as they
42?
noticed Freddie, they started scrambling off the floor to chase them. Yuri and Freddie ran back up to the 4th floor to try and lose the people chasing them, which is where they found us. There were so many things that didn't make sense, though. The most obvious question, at least the one I had, was why would they toy with us by taking Frank's bag if they really had hostile intentions? Freddie's theory was that whoever was in there thought we'd never
Drugs.
be able to find our way out, so they figured they'd toy with us first. Yuri thought that the room with the pentagram in it
52.
was where they were going to kill us or sacrifice us or some weird cult stuff, something like that. I was pretty convinced that they hadn't even been chasing us, that they had just gone downstairs to cut us off when we eventually found our way down there. Another thing, there must have been at least 4 people in there, since one of them had been messing with us, and Yuri and Freddie stumbled upon 3 more. It just didn't
Oh,
add up.
hell no.
I know it doesn't sound that scary when I break it down like this, but trust me, if you were
Ron's
there,
home.
you would have been terrified. We never went back
She
there.
is. She's supposed to be
As
a
far as
goddess.
I know, that building still exists.
I'm a biter. How about let's not? That was freaky. Wouldn't you leave at the first pentagram? Just asking for a friend.
This happened
I
a
don't
little
like
over 5 years ago.
Oh,
I had just moved into my first home, which I currently no longer live in. At the time, I was coming off a long stretch in a cramped downtown apartment in Spokane. Convenient location, sure, but I'd grown tired of the constant traffic noise, the crowded sidewalks, and the feeling that I could hear my neighbors breathing through the walls. I wasn't a kid anymore, and I was ready for something quieter. The place I ended up renting was a small 1-story home on the outskirts of some rural town, tucked behind
Ew.
a stretch of pine trees with a narrow gravel driveway. There's really not much else to say about it because it wasn't much to begin with. Just 2 small bedrooms, an outdated kitchen, and a cramped bathroom. But it was peaceful. The nearest neighbors were a little ways down the street. They were out of eyeshot and definitely out of earshot. Finding a job out there was the most frustrating thing, but I was eventually able to land one. Between the hours and the general exhaustion, I didn't have much of a routine. I mostly lived off takeout and kept to myself. No social life to speak of, which I didn't mind. This particular night happened in late October. I had just gotten home from work, maybe around 9:45 or so. It had been a long day, one of those mentally draining kinds of shifts where all you want is food and a quiet place to sit.
yes.
I kicked off my boots, changed my clothes, and ordered Chinese from a spot I'd used a few times before. There weren't any
Yes.
delivery apps that serviced that area, so your options for food were pretty limited and depended purely on which places were willing to drive out to you. It was sometime just after 10 when the doorbell rang. I remember thinking, damn, that was fast.
Oh,
I
damn.
walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. There was a guy standing there wearing a hoodie and jeans with his hands in his pockets, but he didn't have any food with him.
Oh, hell no.
No bag, no receipt, nothing that even remotely screamed delivery driver.
Oh, hell
I should
no.
have caught on to what was happening sooner, but my brain was operating on low power and I just wasn't thinking straight.
Brother.
Against my better judgment, I cracked the door slightly open.
Oh, you're
keeping the
stupid.
chain on. I asked him if he was here with the food. He paused for a couple seconds, then nodded, saying something about wanting to double check the order first before grabbing it from his car. That's when I came to my senses.
Thank you.
I told him flat out that if he didn't bring the food to the door, I was going to call the police.
Thank God.
Instead of responding, he muttered something under his breath before turning and walking down the driveway. I watched him until he disappeared into the darkness, the whole time thinking about whether or not I should say something. I decided against it, which I still think was the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Either way, though, my gut was churning at that point. I shut the door and locked it, then grabbed my phone and called the restaurant. The manager picked up, and after I explained what happened, he told me the food hadn't even left yet.
Oh, God.
That was the moment it really clicked. Whoever had just been at my front door was some stranger with the intention of robbing the place or doing something even worse. God knows what. I called the non-emergency police line and reported what happened. The dispatcher advised me to stay alert and said they noted for patrol. It wasn't urgent enough for a response, but it was enough to get logged.
My
Which
fiance's
I think
coming in,
was
so if you hear
fair
weird
since
noises,
something actually happened.
there's a reason.
And in all likelihood, the guy had probably just left.
Or
20
is it
minutes
my
later,
fiance?
The actual delivery
Is
guy
it this
came.
guy?
I took the food and paid him, and that was that. Around 11:30, I was in the living room watching TV with the lights off. when I heard
Why?
a noise.
Okay, come on. Add. There.
A faint scraping sound coming from the back of the house. I muted the TV and froze, trying to be as quiet as possible. After a few agonizing
Ew.
seconds of silence, I heard the scraping sound again. It was coming from the back door. I was absolutely sure of it. I stared dead straight at the back of the door, and to my horror, the doorknob slightly jiggled a few
Oh, hell
times.
no.
Someone was testing it.
Hello.
Hi!
I'm live streaming right now. To 3 whole people. Do you want to say hi?
Wow!
Yeah,
Hello!
2 of them are just my friends. I think the last one probably is. I just don't know who it is.
Hi, Mr. Fiance Man. Hello.
That's Lane. He's cool. He's eating my artwork as I speak. We're listening to terrifying stories.
Let's go.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
That's good.
He sure does sound like a human. I'm actually an AI construct. Yeah.
You sure don't feel like an AI construct.
Oh,
I meant your skin, you
Oh.
nasty man.
oh.
Without another thought, I quietly called 911 and told them what was happening. I grabbed a kitchen knife and locked myself in my room, still trying to...
Oh, this person's getting robbed.
Nice.
Yeah, just want to let you know that. Also, question.
Yes.
You know, you like doing urban exploration, right?
Sometimes.
If you see pentagrams painted freshly on the wall, what are you gonna do?
Leave.
Okay, this person did, and they were like, funny. Anyways,
I have common sense, therefore I leave.
I know. And then first they saw one, and then they saw a freshly painted one, and then they were like, "LOL, I guess we'll keep going."
Yeah, let's-
And then they
let's keep
heard
going.
a guy running towards them with a knife, and then he was
Oh.
like, "I should have cut you when I had the chance." And they were like, "Oh, maybe we should leave." No.
Oh
no
my
shit.
God.
Anyways, just wanted to ask you about that.
quiet as possible. After a good 15 minutes, an officer finally announced himself at my front door, and I rushed to let him in. The police did a search of my property and the surrounding area. No one was in sight. Despite that, one of them pointed out
Do I like turtles? Yes, I love
I was
turtles.
gonna say he loves turtles. How did you know he likes turtles?
I love turtles.
That's actually kind of creepy that you knew that. Lane, you gotta tell me something. What's wrong? What? How do you know this?
How do you know?
He's actually in our closet right now. The clearly open one.
My swords are in there. Don't mess with those.
No, he just wants your turtle.
Don't mess with my turtle.
fresh pry marks.
I want to get a
Looked like
turtle.
someone as possible. After
I don't know
a
if I
good
could take care
15
of him.
minutes, an
We can
officer
try.
finally announced himself at my front door, and I rushed to let him in. The police did a search of my property and the surrounding area. No one was in sight. Despite that, one of them pointed out something near the back door. Fresh pry marks. It looked like someone had tried to
No,
wedge
you did
something
not
under
show
the
me.
lock. Probably a flathead.
Show
Speaking of
me.
cats.
Show me.
I gave them my statement.
Oh, she won't let me pick her up.
Connected to what had happened
Wait,
earlier.
guys, he got her. Show her.
Cat.
There she is.
Kitty cat.
He
Who's
caught
very
her.
Angry. Kitty cat.
I tried to catch her.
God. There you go.
She
I'm
ran.
sorry.
She ran away from me.
I'm sorry.
Yay!
They said patrols would be increased temporarily, but other than that, there was nothing they could do.
We don't want to do our
Much as
job.
that answer dissatisfied me, I had no choice but to accept it and move on. I'd be lying if I said I slept soundly after that, but the next few nights passed without incident. I told myself there was no way that guy would return. after
I would
getting
go
the
to a
police call on
club.
him twice.
I would go to a bar just to meet a dude to be like, hey, you want to spend the days with me, like in my house, just to like chase off people. I got food.
I got food.
I got a couch. I got Netflix.
I got Netflix.
Do you want to just chill, man? It's just. Huh?
The floor had this.
Oh, that's an old one. Throw it away.
Oh.
And he didn't. But a few nights
This is the
later,
old one, throw it away.
I woke up sometime
Well,
after midnight
you know what I mean.
to sirens. Police sirens. They
threw
weren't
it away.
too close. They were loud enough to rattle me awake.
Okay, police sirens.
I got up and went to the window just in time to see 3 cruisers fly past my house with their sirens blaring. I was glad that it had nothing to do with me. I
Uh
was still curious nonetheless. I figured it was probably some unrelated domestic thing and just went back to
huh.
bed.
It's just. It's
Not
probably
20
just a.
minutes after I
You
had
know.
fallen back
Oh, it's
asleep,
surely
I
nothing.
was woken up again. This time to knocking at my front door.
Oh hell no.
I groggily got out of bed,
Nope.
walked over to the door,
Nuh-uh.
and checked the peephole.
Why?
There were 2 uniformed officers standing on the porch.
Uh-uh.
When I opened up, one of them asked if I recognized someone they just detained a few streets over. He held up his phone and showed me a photo.
Uh-huh.
It was him. It was that guy from a few nights earlier.
Ew.
The one who had tried to break into my house.
Nasty.
I emphatically confirmed it with audible shock in my voice.
Fuck yes!
Apparently, he'd just been caught trying to
sorry.
break into someone else's house nearby. They had him in custody and figured there was a chance there was a tie to the call I had made earlier in the week.
I will.
The officers told me I wouldn't have to
can't do
worry
it while
about
I'm
them
doing
anymore,
this.
and I thanked them. That was the last I ever heard about it. They never followed up with me, and I never inquired. I was just happy to move on with my life and basically forget about the whole thing. I actually ended up moving out of that house shortly after that, mostly because I was going crazy, living in isolation.
Well, that wasn't terrifying.
Boom, boom, boom,
This
boom.
happened just a few weeks ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. My name's Catherine, and I'm a 24-year-old law student, about to start my 2nd year at NYU. For anyone unfamiliar, first year is a nightmare. I don't think I slept more than 4 hours a night from September to May. So when summer finally rolled around, I promised
AI
myself
construct
I'd be
fiance
going
man
out.
is going in the other room.
He was.
I'm going out
he was telling me
about it
secrets.
since. My name's
Hey,
I know.
Ron. Can you do me the biggest of favors in a bit?
What is the biggest of favor?
If I buy you a drink, can you go get me a Monster?
Yes.
Or 2 of them?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Also, you ready for tomorrow's D&D session?
Yes.
Very excited.
Tattoo time.
This happened just a few weeks ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. My name's Catherine, and I'm a 24-year-old
Catherine.
law student, about to start my 2nd year at NYU. For anyone unfamiliar, first year is a nightmare. I don't think I slept more than 4 hours a night from September to
Also,
May.
do you want me to go in a bit or do you want me
So
to go
when
now?
summer finally
You can go there.
Okay.
rolled around, I promised myself I'd enjoy it while I could. That meant going out a lot, especially on weekends. I was staying back home for the summer for a couple of reasons. It was easier on rent for one, and all my hometown friends were around as well. Plus, it gave me a nice sense of familiarity in return that you can only get from being at home. Most Saturdays, we ended up at the same handful of bars a couple towns over. There's one in particular that's always packed, and that's where I was with my friend Jackie the night everything went down. This is gonna sound bad, but I have this habit of pretending to be kind of ditzy when I meet guys at bars.
Me.
Nothing too over the top, just enough to let them assume things, and assume things they do. I'm not sure if this has always been a dynamic surrounding nightlife, but the guys at bars, at least the ones I interact with, seem to assume every girl they talk to is brain dead. I'm not a genius or anything, but I'm definitely not brain dead.
It's like I'm not
And
stupid,
yet,
dude.
somehow, pretending to be dumb is kind of fun. I can't even really explain why I do it. I just think it's funny seeing how guys react. And I'll admit, there's something satisfying about flipping the script once I get bored of playing dumb.
I mean,
Jackie and I had
makes sense.
just gotten our drinks, and we were scanning the crowd when these 2 guys slid into conversation with us. We later learned their names were Sebastian and Luke. They seemed pretty normal. Not immediately creepy, decent looking, confident, no readily apparent red flags either, which was always a good sign.
Well, they're
Jackie
not just
seemed
gonna
to click
sit
with
there.
Luke almost instantly, So I figured I'd stick it out and talk to Sebastian. He wasn't bad, kind of charming actually. We actually talked to them for a really long time, which was kind of shocking to me considering the vast majority of these bar encounters don't last more than 5 minutes. Jackie's not exactly what you'd consider a nice girl, so the fact that she wasn't closing herself off to conversation was saying something.
Uh-huh.
At one point, she grabbed my arm and whispered that she needed the bathroom. As we were leaving, Sebastian asked if we wanted anything to drink.
Nope.
I told him we'd both have a rum and coke, which I opted for because it's a pretty standard drink that even a college bartender would have trouble
But,
screwing
like,
up.
you don't know then, though.
In the bathroom, Jackie admitted she was thinking of going home with Luke.
Am I the only one that has, like, that my girl sensors are going off? Hey, do you want me to get you a drink? No. Get it while I'm here, not while I'm gone. Weirdo.
Preferably sooner rather than later. I was pretty shocked by the news, to be completely honest with you. I'm usually the one to make the poor, spontaneous decisions, not her. I questioned why she was acting in such an uncharacteristic way, and she tried convincing me that Luke, quote, could be the one, which was obviously laughable, but I wasn't going to tell her that.
Oh, God.
Instead, I just shrugged. I wasn't particularly invested either way, but I figured if she was into it, I'd be a good friend and just go with the flow. As we were returning from the bathroom, I spotted the guys across the bar. They didn't seem to notice us. Interestingly, they weren't laughing or talking in the fun, relaxed way they had been before we left.
Ew.
Instead, they were just kind of standing there with blank faces. The closer I looked, the more it seemed like they were actually whispering, which was even stranger. For whatever reason, that little change in behavior gave me a really unsettling feeling that I couldn't shake.
Ew.
As soon as we got within a few feet of them, the energy shifted again. It was subtle, but I noticed. They
Ew.
both snapped right back into the casual bar vibe they had been sporting just a few minutes ago.
Ew.
Luke nudged 2 drinks toward us without saying
Uh.
much.
Ooh.
I looked down. There were 4 drinks total, 2 rum and cokes and 2 something elses. I couldn't really tell what the other drinks were, but based on the bright yellow color and the slushy looking liquid, one thing was for sure. They definitely didn't look like something most guys would order. I decided to take advantage of that. With as innocent a smile as I could muster, I pointed at the peculiar looking drinks and asked the guys what they were. Sebastian said they were pina coladas, which was beyond random. I tilted my head and gave him a teasing look, trying not to make it too obvious that I thought something was up. In a playful voice, I said, "You know, I think these drinks might be too girly for you guys. I would hate for anyone to catch you sipping them." Before waiting for a response, I reached out and slid our rum and cokes across the table, replacing them with the frozen drinks.
Hee.
Then I raised my glass and took a long, slow sip before giving Sebastian a little wink. Jackie caught on and grabbed the drink I pushed in front of her. She looked at me for a second, clearly confused, but she went with it.
Just listen,
Sebastian
Jackie.
stared at me
Listen.
for a long second with his eyes narrowed, like he was sizing me up. Then he just laughed and said, "Touche." He started sipping the rum and coke, and admittedly, that put me at ease. Luke followed suit. We finished the drinks without incident.
I don't trust him
At
still.
that point, Jackie was being pretty obvious that she wouldn't mind leaving soon. Luke eventually took the hint, suggesting that we all go back to his place for a nightcap. That's when I started feeling like everything was normal again. I didn't think it was likely that the guys would have invited us over if they
I'm sorry,
suspected we knew
honey.
something was up. We Ubered back
Let
to
me
his
have it.
apartment, which wasn't anything fancy. Just a modest second-floor unit.
Why
in a
are we
small
going to a guy's
complex nearby.
apartment?
Inside,
Please.
it was cleaner than I expected, but weirdly minimal. Like, there wasn't much furniture or decoration anywhere, almost like he had just moved in. Luke had some White Claws in his fridge, so we kept the energy going by drinking those and playing some music on his TV. At first, everything seemed normal.
Nope.
There was no sign that anything was off whatsoever. In fact, it kind of seemed like the guys were starting to sober up. But that didn't last long. We couldn't have been there more than 20 minutes when things got strange again. The guys seemed to be getting progressively drunker really, really fast.
This is how serial
They
killer
started slurring
starts.
their
This
words
is
and
how.
laughing to themselves. And then, just like that, the 2 of them fell asleep on the couch within minutes of each other. It was a pretty horrifying sight. My initial suspicion that they had messed with our drinks was proven right in front of our very eyes.
Oh.
Jackie was oblivious to what was going on, but I don't blame her. She
Uh-uh.
was significantly drunker than I was. She rushed over to Luke and tried to slap him awake, but I pulled her back and told her to calm down. I asked her if she remembered me switching the drinks, then told her I thought it was because they might have done something to them. And it turned out I had been right. She looked at me with this shocked expression and then just said, "Oh my God," over and over and over again.
Oh, I would never go out
The
again.
two of us just sat there for a few minutes, trying to calm each other down and figure out what to do next. I wanted to just leave right then and there, get as far away from those guys as possible.
My hand's going
Jackie was determined to find some kind of incriminating evidence. We looked around a bit, but it's not like we're crime detectives.
I mean, yeah.
Plus, what exactly were we supposed to do? We weren't going to flip the place upside down looking for something we didn't even know was there.
I would call
told
the
Jackie
police.
this, and after a little persisting, I finally got her to leave it alone. We left not long after that. I think we were both still in shock. We never went to the police.
Why?
Not that night or the next morning.
Why?
At this point, we probably never will.
Why?
I know that might sound irresponsible or even stupid.
Yeah.
But we don't have any real evidence that they did anything sinister or illegal. There's also the possibility that they really had just gotten super drunk super fast. But I think it's unlikely, and so does Jackie. Either way, I don't think I've ever been closer to real danger. Why anyone would drug girls who are already willing to go home with them is a complete mystery to me.
Because they're
That makes me
nasty.
think they were planning something even worse, as if the situation wasn't already the kind that never has a happy ending. Also, and this is the part that confuses me and makes me doubt myself the most, why the hell would they agree to let us go home with them if they knew they were hours away from passing out? I guess it's possible that they thought the drugs wouldn't affect them because of their bigger size. But I don't know, that might just be stupid. Also, why even bother taking the risk? I really can't begin to explain any of it. This is going to be something I think about regularly for a while. I know it's my own stupidity for letting someone else control my drink, but it's just crazy to think about what some people will do to get what they want.
All right, that was terrifying. Are there other ones? Let me see. Come on, give me one, give me one, give me one, give me one. 3 disturbing true Halloween stories. Now let's go deep into the rabbit hole. Let's do 3 disturbing true childhood horror stories. Great! I hate ads. Let me live. Thank you. Are y'all ready to revisit the worst days of our lives?
This one's from when I was a kid. It's not something I talk about much or even think about really. Whenever I do, it gives me an icky feeling inside. Hard to describe. Maybe writing it down will give me some measure of release or whatever, but who knows. I went to a boarding school out in the suburbs. I was there starting in 8th grade, and I ended up staying through most of high school. I shared a room with this kid named Weston. We weren't close at first, just kind of thrown together like everyone else. But over time, we got used to each other. The room itself was basic, 2 beds, 2 desks, and a tiny shared closet. After a few weeks, I started picking up on some weird stuff about Weston. For starters, he gave me a list of items I wasn't allowed to bring back to the room. Completely out of the blue, too. Like he just walked up to me with a folded piece of paper, as if it were some customary thing to be expected of a roommate. As if
Okay.
that wasn't strange enough, the list itself was even stranger. There were a bunch of random things on it that didn't even remotely make sense. I can't remember all of it, but apparently I wasn't allowed to bring frogs into the room. If I ever had any intention of doing that.
Not
I didn't even
frogs.
know where anyone would even find a frog, let alone why they would bring it into their room. But the strangest thing on the list by far was salt. You don't eat salt, so I couldn't imagine why he'd feel the need to tell me that. What, did he think I just bring a salt shaker to the room for no reason?
Maybe.
That was absurd. Plus, it was frowned upon to bring any food items back to your dorm, which added to the mystery. And beyond that, what kind of problem could salt even pose in the first place?
He's a demon.
As far as I knew, salt allergies weren't a thing, so I couldn't imagine what he was trying to avoid with that one.
Oh my god, hi
It
Leah.
was just bizarre, especially because of how serious he was about it. You might be thinking it was his form of a joke.
No,
but I'm telling
he's a
you,
demon.
This kid did not know what humor was. He also had
'Cause
this
he's a
habit
demon.
of muttering to himself.
'Cause he's a
Not just
demon.
occasionally, like full-on whispering under his breath.
It doesn't matter what he does,
especially
he's
at
just a
night when
demon.
the lights were off. I'd catch little pieces of it sometimes, like he was talking
Ew,
to
I don't
someone.
like the way that looks.
But there was never anyone else in the room. It was really freaky at first, especially when he accidentally woke me up while doing it. But like everything else, I eventually got used to it. He also kept this little notebook, which wasn't anything crazy until I realized what was in it. The way he never let anyone see it made me think it was something embarrassing or personal, but I was wrong. I knew for a fact that he kept it buried under his mattress, and my curiosity swelled over this time, ultimately getting the better of me. One day when he was out of the room,
Ooh.
I felt around under his mattress until I found it. The vast majority of it was empty, but there were a few pages that had writing on them. It took me all of 2 seconds to realize what I was looking at. It was a long list of names, and a bunch were scratched out.
Excuse
I
me.
read through it and realized that a bunch of the names were kids I knew from school. I frantically scanned it for my name, and I was horrified to actually find it in there, on one of the last pages. It wasn't crossed out, which I figured was a good thing. I had no idea what
Maybe.
any of it meant. There wasn't anything else in there, though, just the names, most of which were not crossed out. I tried deciphering it, but there was nothing special about the list. As I was putting it back, I couldn't help but wonder why someone would be so secretive over something so harmless.
That's
Were it
not
for the way
harmless.
Weston protected that thing with his life, I probably would have brushed it off as a list of people he didn't like at school or something. But for whatever reason, seeing that list gave me this really sick feeling inside.
Good.
Like Weston was more than just a socially awkward kid. For weeks after that, I was extremely paranoid that he somehow knew what I had done, and I started worrying that he was going to do something to me.
Oh, I
He
need to
didn't
see it.
interact much to begin with, but I could have sworn I caught him glaring at me more often than he ever had. This unexplainable sense of fear started hanging over me, and I gradually spent more and more time inside my dorm. I had a decent amount of friends. I got to a point where I was spending more time in my friends' dorms than my own. And one night, something happened that made all my paranoia feel justified. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night. I had no idea what time it was, but it was pitch black outside, and I couldn't see anything. At first, I thought I had woken up to Weston's muttering again, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized the reality was much worse. Weston wasn't muttering. That's because instead, he was literally towering over my bed, just standing there in the dark, smiling.
Oh,
His
hell
hands were slightly
no.
raised,
Hell
like he was about to do
no.
something, but had frozen mid-motion. I screamed. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
I sat up in the bed. Despite my outburst, he didn't stop smiling. He
Ugh.
didn't even flinch at my scream. He just kept looking down at me, without even altering his stance.
Oh my god.
The shock of having been woken up like that was one thing.
Oh,
The way
hell
he didn't even
no.
react made it even scarier.
Hell
When I finally
no.
demanded to know what he was doing, he just said I'd been talking in my sleep. Like that shell of a response
Oh,
somehow
yeah.
explained everything.
Oh my god,
Like
thank
it was totally
you.
normal to be standing over someone's bed at 2 in the morning. I didn't know what to say. I was still partly in shock. The way he kept smiling, even after explaining himself, discouraged me from asking any more questions.
No,
He
I
went
need
back
to
to his
do.
bed without another word. I stayed awake the rest of the night, and not by choice. The next morning, I tried bringing it up. I felt more comfortable and honestly more safe asking him about it now that there was daylight in the room. But he acted confused, like he genuinely didn't know what I was talking about.
Oh no.
Not in an angry way either. More in like an, okay man, whatever you say kind of way.
Whatever,
Like
bro.
he thought I was making it up as some kind of joke. I couldn't decide whether he was just a really good liar or whether he truly didn't remember the incident. I couldn't decide which was worse. After that, my fear only got worse, and not just of Weston. It's hard to explain, but I started being afraid of the room itself, like his presence had infected it somehow. Even when he wasn't there, I felt uncomfortable in my own dorm. Things only got worse. About a week later, I came back to the room one night to find a small garden snake on my bed. I'm
Oh,
not
look, a
kidding,
snake.
It was a live snake on my bed. I
Why?
again screamed and looked over at Weston, who was just sitting there at his desk with this blank expression on his face. He actually apologized this time and said that it was just meant to be a harmless prank, but I didn't take it that way.
No.
When I asked where he'd even gotten a snake in the first place, He looked at me all confused and said something I will never forget. He said, "What do you mean? They're everywhere." I didn't know what to say to that. I was worried that if I said the wrong thing, he might actually try to hurt me. I had never seen a single snake on campus, but we were surrounded by woods, so maybe he was right. But what really freaked me out was when he opened this jar on his desk, and the snake just slithered right in, all on its own.
Huh?
It wanted to be captured. I didn't understand how a wild animal would just do that. The whole thing, from finding the snake to his creepy response, to the way it behaved, was freaky. Freakier than I'm describing it. I didn't report it. My young and naive self just couldn't get over what Weston would do if I got him in trouble. That's the thing you have to remember. I was just so young. I was 13. I wasn't old enough to know how to deal with the situation. The breaking point came from a few nights later. It started with what I thought was a nightmare. I was in sleep paralysis, totally unable to move. And there was this dark mass swirling around the ceiling. It was kind of like a blob and kind of like a cloud. It was pulsing like it was alive, or at least breathing. It kept shifting and moving, and I could only watch as it started descending toward my bed. A claw, or something like a claw, emerged from the mass and started scratching at my bed frame. And then it started reaching for me. But before it could grab me, it suddenly recoiled, like something had burned it or scared it off. And then it went completely crazy. It started flying around the room really fast, like it was angry or wounded. It knocked a bunch of stuff off our desks and rummaged through our closet. And in one abrupt motion, it flew towards the window and smashed right through it, disappearing into the darkness outside.
Who the hell? What kind of drugs are you
Second after
on?
the shattering glass, my eyes snapped open. Only my neck was already pointed in the direction of the window, like I had been facing that way the whole time. And all at once, I realized why that was so terrifying. The window was actually shattered. What's worse was that there were shards of glass falling to the floor in real time, like it had just been broken moments ago. The rest of the room looked identical to what the scene in my dream had looked like. It was a perfect one-to-one match. Despite being confident that I was now awake, I still couldn't move, but it was the most terrifying moment of my life. I tore my eyes away from the window and realized there were long scratches in my bed frame, in the exact spot that claw in my dream had scraped.
What the hell?
The fear didn't go away, but the paralysis did. As soon as I could move again, my first thought was that Weston had done it somehow. I went to his bed, but he was fast asleep. He was even snoring, but I wasn't going to let him fool me again.
Weston.
I started shaking him,
Weston.
knowing he was faking it, but he didn't wake up.
Weston.
I kept shaking him, and the longer he stayed asleep, the more desperately I wished he'd wake up.
Weston.
It was such a nasty feeling. I was both deathly terrified of him and deathly terrified of what it would mean if he hadn't been behind the whole thing. If my nightmare hadn't been a nightmare. The moment I started thinking about that possibility, I started shaking. I wanted to be able to blame him for what had happened, or at least have some other person to make me feel less lonely and afraid. But he didn't wake up. It was too much for me to handle. I went back to my bed, curled up in a ball, and started crying. I didn't know what else to do. The broken window was real. The ransacked room was real. The scratches in the bed frame were real. A few minutes later, Weston finally woke up. He seemed genuinely shocked at the state of the room. I thought that meant we were in it together.
You didn't hear shit?
No. Instead, he accused me of having gone through his stuff, and we got into a screaming match. I couldn't believe he was trying to blame the whole thing on me, and he was the psychotic one. He started hissing at me like a cat, and then he started yelling in a foreign language, one I had never heard before. It was not normal. Normal people don't do that.
Demons
He was
do.
about to attack me. Things get kind of blurry after that.
Did you just
The RA
assume
showed up at our
his,
door,
like,
probably because of all
dimensional...
the noise, and he escorted both of us out. I ended up sleeping in a vacant room that night. When I woke up the next morning, I was freezing. It took me a few seconds to realize why. The window in that room was wide open, even though I definitely remember it being closed.
Oh my god,
No
no.
one else was supposed to be in there. That was the nail in the coffin. My brain was already working on a rational explanation for what had happened the night before, but seeing that open window destroyed it all. One of the RAs told me to go get my things from my old room. When I got there, all of Weston's stuff was already gone. He must have cleared it out earlier that morning.
God, Weston.
Nobody told me what was going on. The administration just moved me to a different room with a different roommate. When I asked about Weston, they said he was no longer my concern.
Oh,
I never saw him again.
okay.
Honestly, I don't remember much about the remainder of my time at that school. I think my brain just shut everything down and locked everything out as a last resort or some kind of coping mechanism. I don't think I'll ever know what was wrong with that kid Weston.
He needs
but
a
I don't
hug.
care. I've thought of every possible explanation for what happened that night, and none of them make any sense.
Demons.
The window was broken from the inside. Anything that might have smashed it from the outside would have been lying on the floor. And I have trouble convincing myself that it was Weston. Not only because of how heavily he had been sleeping, but also because of how quickly I had woken up after the nightmare. I would have seen him rushing back to his bed. Something abnormal happened that night, and it terrifies me to think that I might have witnessed it. That my nightmare hadn't been a nightmare.
That's awful. Oh, look, another ad. Perfect timing.
When I was little, my parents would send me to my grandparents' farm in Pennsylvania for 2 weeks every summer. The house sat on 40 acres of mostly woods. It was honestly more woods than farm. My cousin Francisco would come for different weeks because our parents wanted to give our grandparents a break between visits. I always went first 2 weeks of July. He always went last 2 weeks of August. The house had 3 floors, but the third floor was just an attic with one finished room that used to be my dad's when he was my age. That's where I slept. The ceiling slanted down on both sides, and there was one window that overlooked the backyard into the woods. My grandparents went to bed early, usually before 9. My parents told me it was rude to stay up past them, so I'd stay in my room after they wished me goodnight. I wouldn't sleep, though. I would stay up reading with a flashlight or playing my Game Boy. There wasn't much
Hell
else
yeah,
to do
Game
there.
Boys.
The first summer went by without incident, but I started noticing weird things the second summer I was there. On one of the first nights, I was reading in bed when I heard footsteps on the attic stairs. They sounded soft, like someone was trying to be quiet. I watched as the door handle turned and pushed open about 6 inches. As soon as I saw the door opening, I shut my light off and pretended to be asleep. I honestly thought it was my grandma coming to check on me. I was worried that I'd get in trouble if she found out I was awake. But I didn't hear anything after that. No receding footsteps or the sound of the door closing. I forced myself to sleep, assuming I had either missed my grandma leaving or she was still watching me for whatever reason. The next morning, I told my grandpa about the footsteps. He said the house was old and made noises, and that raccoons sometimes got in the walls.
Right.
I thought that was an especially strange explanation because I was pretty sure I had seen the door handle turn, but I didn't want to say that. The footsteps were far too soft to be his anyway, so I just assumed it was my grandma, and he wasn't actually aware of it. 3 nights later, I woke up, or at least I thought I woke up because my bed was
Yeah, I
shaking.
meant to go look at it. I need to go
There was
look at it
someone
right after
standing
this.
At the foot of my bed. It was dark.
Wait,
I
wait,
could
who's
see
it?
her out
Hold on, I missed it.
3 nights later, I woke up, or at least I thought I woke up because my bed was shaking. There was someone
Ew.
standing at the foot of my bed. It was dark, but I could see their outline. I couldn't
Lee.
tell which of my grandparents it was, but it still scared me nonetheless. I closed my eyes and silently counted to 100. When I opened them, the person was gone. I convinced myself it had just been a nightmare, but it didn't feel like one. When I woke up the next morning, my closet door was open, even though I knew it had been closed the night before, which made me doubt whether I had truly been asleep. I started suspecting my grandma was spying on me while I was asleep, as stupid as that sounds. It was the only explanation that made sense to me. Elderly people don't always have the best control over their minds after all. It was scary.
That's so
but I didn't want to bring it
insulting.
up to my grandparents again out of fear of upsetting or disrespecting them. Similar things happened periodically over the course of that week and the next. And when it came time to go home, I was relieved. When my mom picked me up,
It's
I
not
told
just
her
me, right?
everything.
That's so insulting.
She laughed and said it was impossible to get my grandma out of bed after she fell asleep. Then she told me I had an active imagination and that old houses were creepy. She said Francisco never
know that-
complained about anything when he stayed there.
That sounds pretty normal.
It
I
made me
mean,
feel like maybe I really was just
I
imagining
mean,
things.
pretty standard cat experience.
I went back the next summer, and the same things happened. I never actually saw my grandma's face, but I knew it was her. I started going to sleep much earlier to reduce the risk of being awake for something creepy to happen. Years went by. My parents stopped sending me to my grandparents' farm after a certain age, and a big part of me was relieved. My grandparents passed away when I was in college, within mere weeks of each other.
Oh.
The funeral was the most depressing thing ever. Besides how sad it was, I had to converse with a bunch of relatives I hadn't seen in years, which I wasn't thrilled about. One such relative
You're
was
fine.
Francisco, who I actually hadn't interacted with much, even though we were around the same age. It took less than a minute for me to realize I had nothing in common with him. Besides our age, the only thing we really did have in common was our shared time at the farm. So I asked him about it, not really knowing what else to talk about, and feeling like something related to our grandparents was a valid topic of conversation. I told him about what I had experienced there, the footsteps, the figure, the closet door. I even told my theory about it being our grandma. I expected him to laugh or maybe agree with me, but I was wrong. With a blank expression, he said, and I'll never forget this, "That's nothing. That thing used to touch me." I listened in horror as he described things that were categorically worse than what I had experienced.
Oh my
He said
god.
the same figure would stand at the foot of his bed every few nights, but it didn't just watch him like it watched me. He would feel the mattress sink down like it was sitting. Then he would feel fingers on his face, tracing his features. Sometimes it would grab his wrist and hold it. He said he kept his eyes shut and remained frozen in place until it left.
Oh my
I asked him
god.
how he knew it wasn't one of our grandparents, and he said, almost like it was obvious, that he could feel it, that the thing that was touching him had rough and scratchy hands, unlike either of our grandparents.
Oh my god.
I looked at him in shock. I genuinely couldn't believe what he was telling me. Why would he keep something like that to himself? I asked him that, and he said he didn't, that he told his mom about the occurrences several times. She didn't believe him, and actually got mad when he'd complain about it to her.
Oh my
He
god.
stopped talking about it, and told himself that as long as he kept his eyes closed and didn't move, everything would be okay.
I hate parents
Hearing
sometimes.
him tell me that was quite literally horrifying. Not only did it confirm everything I myself had been experiencing, but it made things so much worse. Francisco and I stopped talking about it after that. I could tell both of us just wanted to forget about the shared nightmare and leave it in the past with the rest of our childhood.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't my grandma who was coming into my room at night,
Who
I don't
the
like thinking about what it could mean.
Frick was it?
The way Francisco described it as a thing is something that still freaks me out. But is it any better thinking about how it might have been a human being? That would mean there was a person my grandparents didn't know about living in their house for years.
Oh no.
Which is worse.
Oh, that'd be even worse than just an entity. Damn. At least an entity, you can, like, you know, throw some salt at it or something. But, like, if it's another random person, no, ma'am.
When I was 9 years old, I lived with my parents in a narrow townhouse squeezed between two identical buildings. My bedroom was on the third floor with a window that looked directly into the house behind ours. The houses were so close that I could see straight into the room across from mine, which was maybe 20 feet away at most. For the longest time, there was never anyone in the window, but I used to look through it every so often out of curiosity anyway. One day, there actually was someone in the window. It was a girl. She looked to be about my age, with dark hair and a ponytail. The other thing I remember about her was that she was wearing a yellow sweater. She waved at me, and I waved back. Then she stepped out of the frame of the window. After that, we would wave every day after I got home from school.
That's kind
She
of
was
cute.
always there at 3:30, like she was waiting, and she always wore the same yellow sweater. We played games through the windows. She would hold up drawings, and I would guess what they were. I would show her my homework, and she would give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Oh.
On warm days, I would open my window and try talking to her, but she never opened hers. She would just smile and point to her ear like she couldn't hear through the glass. I figured her parents were strict about keeping the windows
Maybe
closed.
she's deaf.
One day, I asked my mom about the girl. My mom said the Murphys lived there, an older couple with no kids. I told her about the girl, and she said maybe they had a granddaughter visiting. That made me kind of sad, because it meant she would probably disappear one day. But she didn't. She was there almost every day at around exactly the same time, and we played our games for 30 minutes to an hour before she would walk out of view.
I like to.
A few weeks
I'm sorry. Sometimes I just like to wrap myself in a blanket and pretend I'm a carrot. It's like, nice. You good. You go, girl. It's like that. You go, girl.
later,
Brother.
I woke up around 2 a.m. to tapping. I walked over to my window and realized it was the girl.
Okay, before we get to this scary stuff, also, that reminds me of like Wreck-It Ralph, where Penelope, where she has all her wrapper blankets, and she goes, "Sometimes I like to bundle myself up like a little homeless lady." I'm like, I do that too. I have so many blankets on my bed right now, and I just pretend I'm just like camping out in like in a cabin or something, and it's like my nest. I just, I just chill there.
Her window, which was strange because I had never seen her at any time other than right after school. She wasn't smiling like she normally was.
Oh no.
She pointed down at something I couldn't see and put
Oh
her hands
no.
together like she was begging.
Huh?
I didn't know what she wanted, but it started to scare me, so I crawled back into bed. The tapping continued for a few more minutes and then stopped. She wasn't at the window for 3 days after that. I started thinking I had upset her by ignoring her that night. But then on the fourth night, the tapping woke me again. This time she was pressing both hands against the glass.
Are you
Her mouth was
okay?
moving like she was saying something, but I wasn't able to hear her since her window was closed. Her breath fogged up the window, which was strange because it was the middle of May and warm. She kept mouthing the same words. It honestly looked like she was saying, "Help me." Then she stepped back, and I saw something that made me freak out. There was a dark stain on her yellow sweater, like a blotch of paint with mud. I ran to my parents' room, almost crying. My dad ran to my room and looked out my window, but the light was off, and the girl wasn't in the window anymore. My parents convinced me it was just a nightmare and told me to go back to sleep. The next day,
I hate parents.
after the girl didn't show up in the window, I climbed our back fence and saw Mrs. Murphy in her garden. I smiled and waved, and she looked happy to see me, even though we had never met. I asked her about the girl in the third-floor room. She stopped smiling, set down her watering can, and walked a little closer to the fence. The way she stopped smiling so abruptly kind of scared me. She asked how long I had been seeing her. I told her a few weeks. She asked what this little girl looked like, and I described her dark hair and yellow sweater, and how she never opened her window. Then Miss Murphy told me to go back inside. I thought I was in trouble.
Hello? Yes?
Things changed a lot after that day. I was pretty sure Mrs. Murphy called my mom, which made me think I was in trouble even more. My parents moved my bed to the opposite wall that same night. They hung thick curtains over my window, the heavy kind that blocked all the light. When I asked why, they said it was to help me sleep better, but I knew something was wrong. The next day, on the way home from school, my mom told me I couldn't play the waving game anymore. When I asked why, she just said I was too old for imaginary friends. I told her she wasn't imaginary, that I had seen her for months. My mom just repeated that I couldn't go to the window anymore. I was so confused and honestly hurt. No one would explain anything to me. My friend was gone. She never appeared in the window again. My parents acted like I had done something wrong by seeing her. Not like I could express
That's
my feelings to
weird.
them anyway. I was disobeying them by just going to the window in the first place. We moved like a year later. It wasn't until I was in high school that my mom finally explained things to me. Or, more specifically, what Mrs. Murphy had told her. Apparently, the previous owners had a daughter named Jenna. She was 11 when she was hit by a car right in front of the house.
Oh no.
It happened just after school, and she was wearing a yellow sweater on that fateful day. The family moved out shortly after. When the Murphys bought the house, they tried to use that third-floor room, but ended up sealing it completely after things kept happening. My mom didn't really elaborate on that part. I don't think she knew. She just said that Mrs. Murphy had always been very spiritual. I'm 34 now. I live in a house with no windows facing other buildings. That's not an accident. I developed a kind of phobia for windows.
Oh, no.
Reflective surfaces, too. I've had a couple dreams about that girl in the window over the years. It's never a bad dream. I never see her with a stain on her sweater like I had that one night.
That's
She doesn't
sad.
smile in my dreams like she used to smile at me. This will forever be one of those freaky experiences that just doesn't have an explanation.
That's just kind of sad. She's just a little girl who wants help. Like, I don't understand why people get... I mean, granted, if I saw a girl, and I've been, like, hanging out with her or something from far away, and then I learn she's not living, I would be spooked too, because it's like, oh God, that's crazy. I never even considered that she wasn't, like, physical here anymore. But, also, why would you, like... I don't know. I don't know why people are like, oh my god, kid ghosts are more terrifying than. No, they're just kids. I mean, I know there's some like spiritual, like, I don't know, not monsters, but you know what I mean. Like folklore where bad ghosts will disguise themselves, bad entities will disguise themselves as kids to make you drop your guard. But like, come on. A lot of them are just kids. She just wanted a friend and maybe to express what she went through. But like, nobody cares. Anyways, I'm gonna hush now. I'm getting heated. I need. Oh God, 3 true hide and seek stories? Hell no. Let's listen to it.
One thing about me is I love ease. I want something that's
No
gonna
offense,
amplify and benefit
I
me, not make
don't know you. Hide and seek scares me, and I will never play it again ever in my life. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Ever. I will never do it.
I was 15 when it happened. It was a Friday night in late September, just starting to get cold where I lived. My parents went out to dinner with some family friends, and they said they would not be home until late. I had the house to myself. I invited over my neighbor and best friend, Chris. He was the same age as me and lived across the street. We usually hung out in my basement and played games or watched movies, but that night we got bored. At some
As
point,
you do.
he brought up playing hide and seek. It sounded dumb at first, but we had done it before with a group, and it had been fun. The house was small, but it had a lot of places to hide, especially in the dark. We turned off most of the lights to make it scarier. The only light on was in the kitchen. The rules were simple. No going outside, no going into the attic or the crawl space. Basement, bedrooms, closets, and under furniture were all fair game.
God, hide and seek
Wanted to
scares the
hide
pee
first,
out of me.
So I
I
covered
can't do
my
it.
eyes in the living room and counted to 50. I could hear him running at first, and then silence. I finished counting and announced that I was coming.
Nope.
I started in the kitchen since it was right there, but there was nowhere good to hide. I checked behind the basement door, then down the hall. I looked in the bathroom. Empty. I opened the closet near the front door. Nothing. I went upstairs. The floor creaked under me, and every little sound made me tense. I checked my parents' bedroom first, looking under the bed and behind the dresser. Nobody. I went down the hall into my room. It was messy, but not enough for Chris to hide well. I still checked the closet and under the desk. Nothing. That left the guest room at the end of the hall.
Oh, God's sake,
Door
no,
was
but I
cracked
love
open.
him.
I pushed it slowly, expecting him to jump out and scare me, but the room was dark and quiet. I stepped inside and scanned around. I bent down to look under the bed. Nothing. I opened the closet door. Empty. At that point, I thought maybe he was in the basement, so I went back downstairs. I checked behind the laundry machines and in the storage space under the stairs.
Did
I
he
was
just
about
like,
to give up.
you just
I finally
leave
found
you?
him curled up behind some boxes. He laughed and asked how long it had taken me. I told him way too long. Then we switched. He counted and I did. I went upstairs and slid under the guest bed, pulling the bed skirt down to cover me. My heart raced while I lay there in the dark.
Okay, it's not just me.
I heard him come upstairs a few minutes later, his footsteps slow and heavy on the floor. He opened the bathroom door first, then he stepped into my parents' room. After a while, the footsteps came down the hall toward where I was. I could hear him breathing as he walked into the guest room. He stopped near the bed. I held my breath. His shoes shuffled against the carpet. Then silence. A long silence. I thought he had figured it out and was about to yank up the bed skirt, but instead, he walked out. I lay there a few more minutes, waiting to hear him call that I had won, but the house stayed too quiet. Finally, I crawled out. I went downstairs, expecting to find him on the couch, but he wasn't there. I called out that the game was over. A voice came from the basement saying he was down there. I thought he was messing with me. I walked to the basement door, opened it, and shouted down the stairs. He shouted back that he was still looking for me, and he asked where I was hiding. That made my stomach twist. I told him I was out now and standing in the kitchen. A second later, I heard him coming up the stairs. He stepped into the light and looked confused. He asked how I had gotten upstairs so fast.
Oh.
I told him I had been under the guest bed the whole time. He frowned and said he could have sworn he checked that room, and he heard someone moving inside.
Dude, I'm pausing for a second. Out of all the fucking stories that we just heard, this is the one that's scaring me the most now. Like, this is the one that's getting me. I don't know why this is the one. I think it's because I hate hide and seek. I hate it so much. Why is this a game? This is the one Okay, it's fine. Okay, I got this. I think.
He said he thought he heard breathing. I told him I stayed perfectly still. We argued a little, then he just shrugged it off. We played another
Why
round.
would you just shrug it
The whole
off?
time I felt uneasy. Every creak in the house made me jump.
Also, sorry, this is very unprofessional, but hold on. I forgot some of the details for this commission, so let me go. The thing is, I looked too. Aw, this guy just subscribed. Thank you, Atlas. I'm calling you Atlas right now because that's your name on here. So, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I forgot the colors he told me. Continue.
At one point, while I was counting, I thought I heard something upstairs, like a
We're just
soft
gonna do that
thud.
real fast.
But when I searched, it was empty. I found Chris in the laundry room. We kept playing until we both got tired. Then we sat on the couch in the living room and turned the TV back on. That's when we both froze. From upstairs came a loud bump, like something heavy falling. Chris asked if it was my parents. I reminded him they were still gone. The hair on my arm stood up. We sat there waiting, but the
Oh,
house was
no.
silent again. Chris said maybe something slid off a shelf. I wanted to believe that, but then, while we sat listening, we both heard it clearly. A slow creak of floorboards, the sound of someone walking down the hall upstairs. We stared at each other, neither of us moving. Then I whispered that maybe we should check. Chris shook his head, saying no way, but if someone had broken in, we couldn't just sit there. I told him to stay behind me and grab the fireplace poker from beside the couch. We went to the stairs and started creeping up. The house was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. The steps groaned under our weight. When we reached the top, I pointed toward the guest room. The door was closed now. I knew for a fact I had left it cracked open. We stood
Okay, I
there
need to go back because I did not pay
We should
attention.
check. Chris shook his head, saying no way. But if someone had broken in, we couldn't just sit there.
I mean,
I told him to stay
technically you
behind
could.
me and grab the fireplace poker from beside the couch. We went to the stairs and started creeping up. The house was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. The steps groaned under our weight. When we reached the top, I pointed toward the guest room. The door was closed now. I knew for a fact I had left it cracked open. We stood there frozen. Then from behind the door came a sound. A slow dragging noise, like fabric sliding across the carpet. Chris whispered that we should leave. I wanted to, but curiosity and fear kept me in place.
Oh my
I
god.
raised the poker and reached for the knob. When I tell you my hands were shaking, I'm not just saying that to be dramatic for the story. I pushed the door open fast. The room was dark, but the shape of the bed and the dresser were visible. Nobody was there. The closet door stood half open. I moved closer as Chris stayed in the doorway. I yanked the closet door open. Inside was nothing but coats and boxes. We both let out shaky laughs, pretending it was all in our heads. Then, just as we turned to leave, we heard another sound. This time it wasn't upstairs. It was downstairs. The sound of the front door opening and closing.
Oh
Chris
no!
whispered that someone was in the house. I felt my stomach drop. We ran down the hall and crouched in my room with the lights off.
Oh my god.
I held the poker tight. We listened, and at first there was nothing. Then there were faint footsteps on the first floor. I wanted to call the police, but my phone was on the couch where we had been sitting. whispered that maybe we could sneak out the window, but it was too small. The only way out was down the hall past the stairs. The footsteps moved closer. We heard the basement door open, then the steps went down, one by one. We both exhaled in relief. Whoever it was had gone into the basement, so we took that time to run. We sprinted down the stairs, through the kitchen, and out the back door into the yard. We didn't stop until we reached Chris's house across the street. His parents were home, and when we told them what happened, they called the police. The officers searched my house from top to bottom. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry or anyone hiding in the basement. They told us it was probably just the house settling, or our imagination running wild while we played. But Chris and I
Footsteps,
both
it's
knew
just the
what we
house
heard.
settling.
We knew someone had been inside. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep well. Every creak made me think someone was in the hallway. That was the last time I played hide and seek ever.
Yeah.
Too old for it anyway. Chris and I never talked much about it again. But sometimes when we look at each other, I can tell we're both remembering that night. The night hide and seek turned into something else. Even now, years later, I still think about the sound of the closet door, the dragging noise in the carpet, and the footsteps on the first floor. We never found out who it was. Maybe a burglar who realized we were still home. Maybe someone who slipped out when we ran. All I
Probably,
know
but
is that playing
ew.
hide and seek that night showed us just how scary it is to realize you aren't alone in your own house.
I'd rather it be a ghost. People are scary.
I grew up in a neighborhood that backed right up against a stretch of woods. The houses lined one side of the street, and behind them was nothing but trees for miles. When I was younger, a group of us kids from the street used to play together almost every weekend. In the summer,
Hello.
we stayed out late into the night, sometimes until our parents yelled for us to come home. One of our favorite games was hide and seek. We usually played in the backyards and into the edge of the woods. It was fun during the day, but at night it was different. The trees swallowed up the light, and everything looked the same no matter where you were. That was what made it scary, and that was what made it fun. The last time I ever played hide and seek in those woods was when I was 14.
Why would you play hide and seek in the
It was
woods?
August,
That's
hot
terrifying.
and humid, even at night. There were 5 of us. Me, my friend Tyler, his little brother Matt, and 2 kids from down the street, Jason and Eric. We all decided to play outside because it felt cooler than sitting in someone's basement. The rule was simple. You could hide anywhere in the backyards or in the woods, but you had to stay close enough to hear when the seeker called the round over. Jason volunteered to be it first. The rest of us ran off. I went into the
Yeah.
woods with Tyler. We split up once we passed the first
No.
row of trees. I crouched behind a fallen log, my heart beating hard even though it was just a game.
God, I hate
I could
hide
hear
and seek.
Jason shouting numbers back in the yard, his voice echoing through the night. When he finished, everything went quiet. Crickets buzzed around me, and the leaves rustled in the wind. I stayed low and still. After a while, I heard footsteps in the leaves. They were moving between the trees. I thought it was Jason. I held my breath and waited for him to
Oh,
pass.
this is even worse.
The footsteps stopped not far from me. Whoever it was stood there. I waited for them to call out or move again, but they didn't. I felt my skin prickle. I almost whispered to ask who it was,
for her
but then I
dress.
remembered the rules. If I gave myself away,
Which
I would
part is the
lose.
dress?
So I stayed still.
Is this the dress?
Finally, the steps started again. They crunched through the leaves, moving deeper into the woods. I listened until I couldn't hear them anymore. I peeked over the log, but it was too dark to see far.
Right now, I'm telling the truth, I'm traumatized. Much more the children. Can you imagine? I've never seen him.
The moonlight only lit up the tops of the trees. I stayed hidden a few more minutes before I got tired of waiting. I crawled out and started creeping back toward the yards. As I walked, I heard Jason calling that the round was over and everyone should come out. I hurried back and found the others already in the yard. Jason had found Tyler and Eric, but not me or Matt. Matt came running out of the woods a minute later, covered in dirt. He laughed and said nobody would have found him. I told them that I had been behind the log and almost got caught when Jason walked right past me, but Jason looked confused.
Oh,
He said he
God.
never went that far into the woods. He said he only circled near the first trees and then found Tyler crouched by a fence.
I mean, could it be
I
deer?
squinted my eyes in confusion and then asked who it was that walked by me, but everyone just shrugged. We brushed it off and kept playing. The next round, I
Sure.
was seeker. I
That's
counted
smart.
loud against a tree while the others scattered. When I finished, I searched the yards first. I found Eric hiding behind a shed and Tyler in the bushes. Then I went into the woods to look for Jason and Matt.
These
The
kids
woods were
got
quiet
balls, man.
except for the bugs. My flashlight beam swung through the trees. I listened carefully, trying to catch movement. After a while, I spotted Matt crouched near a tree trunk. I shouted that I had him, and he ran back laughing. That left Jason. I searched deeper, calling out that I was coming. That was when I heard it again. The footsteps. The slow, heavy footsteps moving in the dark. They came from just ahead of me.
No,
I
ma'am.
shined the flashlight that way, but the trees were thick. I walked slowly, trying not to make noise. The footsteps stopped. I waited. Now, admittedly, I was getting a little nervous. Then I heard Jason call from behind me that the round was over. I spun around. He was already walking back to the yard. Confused, I asked if he had just been ahead of me. He said no. He had been hiding closer to the house the whole time. Stomach twist. Twice now, I had heard someone moving through the woods who wasn't one of us. I told myself it was probably an animal, but the steps had sounded human.
Oh,
Too happy
no.
to be a raccoon or a fox, even a deer. We played a few more rounds. Every time
Why
I
would
did,
you?
I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was out
I
there.
would just leave.
I kept hearing faint noises in the trees, branches snapping, leaves crunching. At one point, I even thought I saw a shadow move between the trees. But when I aimed my flashlight, it was gone. The others didn't notice anything. They just kept laughing and running. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the nervous pit in my stomach. The last round of the night, Jason wanted to hide in the woods again. We all split up. I didn't want to go too far, so I stayed near the edge. I crouched low in the tall grass. I could see the faint glow of the porch lights through the trees. I heard Jason's faint voice in the distance counting. When he was done, there was once again silence. After a few minutes, I heard something that froze me in place. It was whispering. A low voice, too soft to make out the words, but it was close. My whole body tensed up. I peeked over the grass, but the woods were empty. I listened hard, but the whispering had stopped. A moment later, I heard footsteps again. They moved past me and into the trees. I lay trembling. That was when Jason called that the game was over. Everyone else came out, laughing and brushing dirt off themselves. I walked back slowly, my heart still racing. I told them I had heard someone whispering, but they all just laughed and said I was trying to scare them. I didn't argue, but I knew what I heard. We sat in Tyler's
God.
yard after that, drinking soda and talking. That was when Matt asked if anyone else had noticed the man. I stopped and looked at him. He said while he was hiding, he thought he saw a tall man standing in the woods. He said the man didn't move, just stood there watching. Jason told him he was crazy. Eric laughed it off, but I felt sick, because I believed him. We ended the night soon after. Everyone went home. I lay in bed that night, staring at my ceiling, unable to sleep. I kept hearing the whispering in my head.
How do you, like, shake
The
that
slow
off?
crunch of footsteps in the leaves. I never played hide and seek in the woods again.
Yeah.
Even now, years later, whenever I hear leaves crunch underfoot in the dark, I think back to that night. I think about that man that Matt said he saw. I think about the
Oh my
footsteps that
God.
weren't Jason's, and the whisper that I still can't explain. Maybe it was a stranger passing through. Maybe it was someone who lived out there.
No.
All I know is that when you hide in the dark woods, you never really know who else is hiding with you.
Oh my God. I'm not doing good right now. No, ma'am.
It was a hot Saturday afternoon last July. I was 14 at the time, and I live out in the rural part of Pennsylvania.
This is even
My
worse.
backyard is huge. We have acres of open grass, trees, and an old storage shed at the edge of the yard. My friends and I spent almost every summer day out there. That day, it was me, Ryan, Josh, Adam. We were just messing around
I was
playing
waiting for somebody
basketball
else.
on the hoop my dad put up near the garage. We played for about an hour before we were all tired and sitting in the grass, sweaty and drinking water. That's when we saw a kid we didn't recognize who came walking up from the dirt road that runs past my house. He looked about 16, older than us, taller too. He had black hair that was kind of messy and wore a gray shirt and jeans, even though it was hot out. We all stopped talking when we noticed him. He walked right up like he already knew us. He asked
Sup,
if we
man?
wanted to even the teams out and make it 3-on-3. None of us answered right away. Finally, Adam asked who he was. The kid said his name was Keith. He said he lived just up the road and was just walking through the woods when he saw us. We all kind of looked at each other. I've lived here my whole life and never saw this kid once. Neither had my friends. But he acted normal enough, I guess. Ben asked him if he wanted to play basketball. Keith shook his head and suggested we play manhunt instead. He said my
kinda
yard
like
was
the darker
perfect
hair.
for it since there were so many spots to hide. In the moment, I don't think any of us gave that comment a second thought, but in hindsight, that should have been a red flag. How would this kid know anything about my property? We all agreed
Yeah,
to play. It
actually.
sounded more fun than standing around in the heat. We split into 2 teams. Keith immediately volunteered to be on the hunting team first. He
Actually,
said he
let's do
loved
your
being a
eyes.
seeker. So it was Keith, Adam, and Josh hunting, and me, Ryan, and Ben hiding. Adam kicked a soccer ball to signal the start. We ran off into the
Oh, wait.
yard while the hunters covered their eyes and counted. Ryan took off toward the tree line, then sprinted for the side of the garage. I didn't want to hide in the woods
Sunrise.
yet, so I went into the storage shed. It always smells like gasoline and old wood in there. I found a pile of folded tarps in the corner, so I climbed under one and lay still. I stayed under there for at least 10 minutes, but it felt like forever. Nobody came. I started thinking maybe the hunters had given up, but then the shed door creaked open. The tarp ripped off me in one quick motion. I guess it was an obvious spot. I looked up to Adam's smiling face. We both walked back to the patio. A few minutes later, Ben showed up. He'd been caught. Two. Eventually, Adam and Josh walked back. We all stood around drinking water, but Keith wasn't there. At first, nobody said anything. Then Josh asked where Keith went. None of us knew. We waited another 10 minutes, thinking he'd come walking back any second, but he never did. Adam finally shrugged and said maybe he was just some weird kid and left. The rest of us agreed, even though it felt strange that he would just disappear without saying anything. When the others left around sunset, I went inside. That's when I noticed something odd near my bedroom window. On the grass was this piece of rope. It was weathered and dirty.
Oh my
like it had been
God,
outside
no.
for months. But I know it hadn't been there earlier. I picked it up and tossed it aside, but it stuck in my head. The first thought I had was Keith. I told myself I was overthinking. But later that evening, I couldn't stop wondering if he'd gone inside the house while we were distracted. My dad usually leaves one of the side doors unlocked during the day. I went room by room, checking closets and under beds. Nothing. That night, I got ready for bed around 11. I laid there for maybe an hour, scrolling on my phone, when I heard something. Soft footsteps outside my door. I froze. My dad sometimes gets up at night to use the bathroom, but he always coughs or clears his throat.
Oh, that's
This was
me.
quiet.
That was me telling
Quiet.
if my dad got
I
up.
called out for my dad. No answer.
That's
I
even
sat up, my pulse
worse.
racing. The footsteps stopped right outside my door.
Mm.
I finally got up and locked it. I stood there, staring at the handle, waiting. After about 30 seconds, I heard the front door shut. The sound carried through the whole house. I didn't waste a second. I ran to my dad's room and shook him awake. He groggily sat up while I explained what I heard. He didn't doubt me. He grabbed the shotgun from under his
Thank
bed
God.
and told me to stay close.
What's with parents just not giving a
Searched the whole
shit?
house together. Every closet, the basement, the garage. He even went outside and walked the property with a flashlight. But he didn't find anything. We locked every door and window after that. The next day, I told my friends, and they all laughed it off, saying Keith was probably just some weirdo passing through. And Ryan admitted he thought Keith was strange too. He said Keith barely talked during the game. He just stared at people. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, a scratching sound woke me up. It was coming from my bedroom window. I froze, staring at the blinds.
Anybody else want to just
Scratching
cry right now?
slow, like someone dragging a stick or nail against the glass.
Can we
I
not?
didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I carefully bent one of the blinds open just a crack. On the other side of the window was a figure. I
Ugh.
couldn't see his face, just the shape of someone standing inches away in the dark.
Oh my
Jumped back
god.
and screamed for my dad. I ran into the hallway, shouting until he came out of his room. He didn't hesitate. He ran outside with a shotgun, firing 2 rounds into the air.
Fuck yeah,
Yelling
Dad.
that he'd shoot whoever was out here if they came back. The figure at the window was gone. The rest of the night, I didn't sleep.
God.
I sat in the living
I'm
room
not
with the
gonna
lights on
sleep.
while my dad stayed up too. The next morning, he told me he thought Keith had been the one messing with us. He said if that kid showed up again, he'd shoot him. I know he wasn't fully serious, but that's just how my dad is. He said
He's
that
just
kid isn't
murderous, you
welcome
know.
anywhere near our house ever again. As far as I know, Keith never came back. But sometimes when I'm outside at night, I think about that rope by my window, and I wonder what he was planning to do if I hadn't woken up when I did.
Oh my god. Ugh. This is why I don't like hide and seek. Why did I listen to that? I'm sorry, I made you all listen to that. Let's listen to some more. This one's spooky. This one's Security Guard and Security Guard horror stories. And my fiance Ron, he was a security guard actually. So this is gonna be interesting.
I've been with my company now for a good amount of time. I'd say probably about 6 years now. Thanks to the amount of time I've put in, I have seniority over the other associates. Not to mention, I have a lot more training and credentials under my belt than they do. The company recently picked up a new contract for some kind of big government office building. Where it's located is rather strange for it to be a government office building. I won't get into exact locations, but to give you an idea of what the area it's located in looks like, and what makes it so strange, is that it's located in damn near the middle of nowhere. It's a giant 6-story building surrounded by a giant parking lot.
Actually, this is
Parking lot
Mr.
surrounded by a
Nightmare.
metal fence that's about 10
So
feet
close.
tall. On the top of the fence is barbed wire. There's only one way in and one way out in front of the building at the opening of the parking lot that meets the side road that it's located off of. The side road is about 3 miles away from the main road, which leads to the highway. The fence is completely surrounded by woods. There are literally no buildings, houses, or any other signs of civilization for miles around. Due to my seniority, I get to work whatever shifts and days I want. Typically, I choose to work mornings or evenings and have weekends or Fridays and Saturdays off. But unfortunately, after a few months of us being at this new contract, we started having trouble keeping the overnight people. During the day, there's usually about 3 guards working all 7 days of the week. On the overnight shift during the weekdays, there's 2 guards. And on the overnight shift during the weekends, starting Friday to Sunday, there was
I know,
only
I need to
one
listen to
guard.
more of his stuff.
I should mention before I go any further that every guard is armed on every shift. As I said, we're having trouble keeping people on the overnight shift, mainly on the weekend overnight shift. Because of this,
Oh,
my
darn.
supervisor asked me if I could help out until they could hire more people and work some overtime on the weekend overnight shifts. I could have, and in hindsight, should have said no thanks. But at the time, I actually needed the extra money because I was getting ready to move to a new apartment soon. So I went ahead and accepted the extra shifts. The first couple of weeks were fine. No issues, nothing strange. But what happened on the 3rd weekend is what made me regret my decision for the overtime. It was a Saturday night around 2 a.m. There was a very bad thunderstorm going on outside. I was sitting in the camera control room, which is on the top floor. The control room has a window that oversees the back part of the parking lot. In the room, there's 3 large-sized computer screens that show the CCTV live feeds from all the cameras located throughout the building, as well as the few cameras that are outside in the parking lot and by the entrance/exit of the parking lot. I was sitting in the control room doing what I normally was doing while working overnight by myself. I had the lights off watching movies I previously downloaded on my phone, while also playing
Sorry, this is, wait, also playing what?
games on my Game Boy.
Okay, really fast. When my fiance Ron was a security guard, I dated him for a little bit when he was a security guard, a nighttime security guard, for like this food distribution company. Literally, he would just take his Xbox and like, I think like a little TV or something to work and just play video games at work. Like that's what he did. And he would call his friends and they would all play games together. He would make his rounds and do his job, but like that's basically what he did. So I get this.
I had been sitting down for a while and got up to stretch my legs and move around a bit.
I want to show him this after
I
I'm
was
done
also
with
starting to
the
feel a little
live.
sleepy and was thinking about going down the hall to the vending machine and grabbing an energy drink. After I got up and walked around the control room for a bit, stretching my legs, I went over to the window, peeked through the blinds to look outside.
And that's when I saw
As
it.
I was watching, I was looking
Demons.
at all the heavy wind and rain blowing the random debris around. I was just about to walk away from the window to grab that energy drink when all of a sudden a flash of lightning lit up the surrounding area past the fence. And
Oh,
just then,
God.
I saw a figure dart from one tree to another that was a good distance from it.
God, kill
Say about
me.
20 feet. I kept my position, looking in that direction through the blinds, waiting for another flash of lightning to see if I could see exactly what it was, or if my eyes were playing tricks on me. After a couple of seconds went by, another flash struck. This time, I didn't see anything near or around the tree that I saw the figure move to. At that point, I thought clearly my eyes were playing tricks on me and that it was just me being tired. I left from the window and went down the hall and got the energy drink. I immediately downed the whole thing, hoping that it would kick in.
Damn.
I was finished with it by the time it took me to walk back to the control room, which wasn't long, only about 5 minutes. I got back to the control room, and I immediately noticed that one of the camera feeds had been knocked out on one of the screens.
Great.
It was the camera feed to the back part of the parking lot that the window overlooked. I went over to the window and looked out the blinds in the direction of the camera. I spotted it dangling in the wind from its wires from the post that it was on. I figured the heavy winds must have knocked it off somehow.
Sure.
I sat back at my desk and put
I
in my
think
report for the
murderer.
night, and then went back to what I was originally doing. A few minutes had passed while I was watching a movie on my phone, and I heard the alert sound the system gives when someone is accessing a part of the building that requires a code to be entered on a keypad. I looked at the main screen and pulled up the tab that shows the access points of the building. It showed me the one being accessed was the one in the back of the building by the back parking lot. At that point, a shiver ran down my spine as I realized someone was outside. From the shadow figure to the camera being knocked out, and now to this, the keypad being accessed. Whoever it was had the code because they got in, and the system showed me the green light. I thought to myself, it couldn't be another worker or security guard. If it was a worker, we would have a memo telling us who it was and what times they would be here, as well as what part of the building they would be in. I knew it wasn't a security guard because I would have known about that too. I picked up the phone that was on my desk in an attempt to call the cops, but it was out. I looked
Damn.
at my phone.
Really?
Of course, no service. I figured the best thing to do would be to try to walk around the hallway and try to get service on my phone. I left out of the control room and into the hallway. I started walking down the hallway toward the service stairwell while looking at my phone, hoping to get a signal soon. Just then, as I was looking down at my phone, the power was shut off.
It's that damn
I
phone.
immediately decided, since I was so close to the stairs, that I was going to run down the stairs to the front lobby and run out the door to my truck. I got to the stairwell and opened it up. It was damn near pitch black in there. I decided to use the darkness to my advantage and walk quietly down the steps. I figured if this person cut the power, they had to be in the generator room, which was in the basement. Unfortunately, the basement was the only flight of steps below the lobby where I was headed. Also, the generator was not too far away from the stairwell that I was in. I made it down to the 4th floor, and suddenly I heard a door open at the bottom of the stairwell. I
Oh
stopped
God.
dead in my tracks. At this point, I knew I was armed, but I was thinking to myself, even though I went through training, I don't think I was ready to shoot anyone. I was hoping and praying that it wouldn't come to that. As I was standing there, immersed in my thoughts about my training with my firearm, I started hearing heavy footsteps walking up the stairs.
My God.
I wasted no time in coming up with a new plan. I was going to turn around and walk as quickly and quietly back up the steps as possible to the 6th floor where I came from.
Why don't you just tell
At the
them
top of
who
the
the fuck are
steps, a
you?
few feet past the door, still in the stairwell, there's a ladder that
Just
leads
yell at
up to the
them.
hatch that leads to the roof of the building.
You have the
I
authority.
was going to climb up the ladder to the top just before you have to open the hatch to go any further and just hide in there in the pitch black darkness until whatever happens next. I turned around. Just as I did, my gun banged against the metal to the stairwell railing, making a
Damn.
loud clang sound. As that happened, I froze, and so did the heavy footsteps. A few seconds had gone by, and then I heard whoever it was running as fast as they could up the steps.
Oh,
I sprang
God.
as fast as I could, running up the steps as if my life depended on it. As I got to the top of the steps, just before I was about to pass the door I had come from, I had an idea to create a diversion on the fly. I quickly opened up the door hard and loud, then let go of the handle and let it close and slam on its own. I continued to run to the ladder and climb up it. By doing that, I would make it appear that I had run out the door. With only
sorry.
seconds to spare, I made it up the ladder. The man, distracted by the door tactic, opened it without even looking in my direction. He ran into the hall, the heavy door closing behind him. That's when I saw my chance. I leapt down from the ladder, only about 10 feet high, landing with a loud thud as my feet hit the floor. I bolted for the stairs. The man must have heard the sound, because I had barely made it down one flight before I heard the door open again and his
Yeah.
footsteps pounding down after me. Both of us were sprinting as fast as we could. I managed to stay one floor ahead of him the entire way. When I reached the lobby, luck was suddenly on my side. Behind me, I heard a loud crashing noise followed by a cry of pain. I wasn't certain, but I think the man had tripped and fallen on the stairs. I wasn't about to wait around to confirm.
Good.
I burst through the door, ran straight for the entrance, and used my key to unlock it. Fortunately, I always parked my truck close by. With the wind howling and the rain pouring down, I hit the fob to start the engine and unlock the doors as I sprinted across the lot. I jumped into the truck, threw it in reverse, and just then caught sight of him. Dressed all in black, his face covered by a mask and hood, bursting out of the building and charging toward my car. I slammed the gear into drive and floored it, tires screeching as I tore out of the lot and onto the side road. It wasn't until I was nearly at the main road that I got a signal on my phone. I immediately called the police. They arrived
Jeez.
about 15 minutes later, and I followed them back to the building.
People are scarier
I told them
than
everything,
spiritual stuff,
filling out
man,
reports
sometimes.
for both them and my company.
Ah, gosh.
We searched the entire building and surrounding area, but found nothing. The scariest part came when they checked the stairwell. Apparently, when the man had fallen, he dropped something.
What?
The police recovered a fully loaded, unregistered, semi-automatic handgun. To this day, no one knows why someone would have broken into that building. There was nothing particularly special about it, except that it was government property. Whatever the case,
Maybe
I'm
that's
just
why
thankful that
people
luck
don't like
was
the
on my
government.
side that night.
Still doesn't mean that guy deserves to die, though. Like, bro, he's just doing his job.
I used to work nights as a security guard in a medium-sized corporate office building in New Jersey. And for the most part, the nights were boring, quiet, and uneventful, which is why what happened one night has stuck with me so vividly for years. It started around midnight, after the last employees had left the building and the lobby was empty except for me. Just me and the glow of the security monitors. My job was simple. Check cameras, make a couple of patrol rounds, log any incidents, and mostly just sit and watch for anything unusual. That night, I was going through my usual routine, scanning the screens for the elevators, the hallways, and the underground parking garage, when I noticed a figure moving between the cars on the lower garage feed, which immediately caught my attention because the lot should have been completely empty at this hour. Only people with 24-hour access could get in, and I knew no one had it at that moment. At first, I thought it might have been one of the late shift IT guys, or maybe a cleaning crew member, but it didn't make sense, since cleaning crews had left hours before and the guy wasn't carrying any equipment or wearing a uniform. He was wearing a long, dark coat that looked a little oversized. He wasn't heading to any particular car or toward the exit. just moved slowly, weaving around the rows like he was inspecting the area or making sure no one was around. And something about the way he moved gave me the chills.
Okay. I don't know why, but there's like, in this part of the city that I live in, always around, late at night, somebody just fucking races down the road. Like, that is a race car. What is your deal? Please, I live in the part of town where a lot of old people live. I'm right next to a hospital. Calm yourself.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was off. I called the supervisor and explained what I was seeing, and he told me to stay at my post and keep an eye on the cameras, which I did. But my gut told me I needed to check it in person. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed down to the garage. The elevator ride was long, slow, and every floor that passed seemed to echo in the shaft, making
My brother, shut up! Dude, nobody cares. I can't focus on my scary stories. Gosh.
more on edge than I cared to admit. When the doors opened on the garage level, I scanned the lot with my flashlight, and it was empty. Completely quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes every little creak of the building sound huge.
Oh my god,
Called
yeah,
out
I'm trying to
hello,
live my
scared
life.
But the echo returned empty, and I didn't hear any reply. I walked
was I gonna
slowly
color?
down the rows of cars, shining the light into every dark corner, every space between vehicles, but there was nothing there. Not a single shadow, not a single person. My pulse was racing, and I started to
go?
doubt myself, thinking maybe the camera was malfunctioning, or maybe it had picked up a shadow that wasn't really there. So I went back upstairs to the lobby, trying to shake it off. But as soon as I sat back down and looked at the garage feed again, there he was,
Ew.
standing in the exact same spot, as if he hadn't moved since I'd been there. And now my stomach dropped, because I knew I had just been there, and there was no way he could have gotten back into the same spot unnoticed unless he had been watching me, or worse, waiting for me. I radioed my supervisor again, telling him I was going to keep watching the cameras, and he told me not to approach him unless absolutely necessary, which was easier said than done because I couldn't stop staring at him, and my mind was already running through every possible scenario. For the next 20 minutes, I watched him wander slowly toward the stairwell that led to the upper floors. He moved carefully,
Dude, I don't
pausing,
understand
looking
it.
over his shoulder like he was checking for someone, and then disappeared from the camera just before reaching the door, which made my stomach knot. I checked every other feed, hallways, elevator lobbies, even the rooftop access. There was nothing. No trace of him at all, which only made me feel worse because it was impossible for him to vanish that fast, and it gave me the sinking feeling that he had access to the building somehow, or he was hiding in a way that I couldn't see. I stayed at my desk, heart pounding, until the elevator dinged and opened in the lobby. Nobody
Hello?
was inside, but on the polished floor, I noticed wet footprints leading from the elevator out into the main lobby. Bare feet, which was wrong on so many levels because it was freezing outside, and he would have had to take his shoes off just to wander barefoot. I froze in my tracks, realizing that if he was inside the building now, he could be anywhere, and every unlocked office or storage room was a potential hiding spot. I called the local off-site patrol for backup and debated locking myself in the lobby. But something in me told me I needed to do a patrol and confirm the situation, which in retrospect
That
was
dog in me
probably a
told me
mistake.
I had to boss
I
up.
took the elevator to the 5th floor and started walking the hallway slowly, flashlight in hand, scanning every office door, checking for movement. Every creak of the building made me jump.
I would just quit.
Halfway down the hall, I saw one of the office doors slightly ajar, which shouldn't have been possible because it was always locked at night. I pushed it open with my flashlight, peering inside, but the room was empty except for a sleeping computer monitor and a chair pushed in under the desk. Nothing else. I stepped out into the hall again and froze because I heard the sound of footsteps on the tile behind me. Not mine. Heavy, wet, and uneven, moving fast towards me. My heart leapt into my throat, and I swung my flashlight around the hall, catching a glimpse of the dark coat at the end of the hallway. He wasn't running, but he was walking fast with a purpose, and it hit me that he had been following me the entire time, hiding just out of sight whenever I checked the cameras. I bolted, sprinting down the hall toward the stairwell, barely noticing the handrail slamming against my arm as I rushed past. The
Ow.
footsteps followed, close enough that I could hear them clearly now, echoing in the hall. And I realized I had no idea how he had gotten inside, no idea what he wanted, and the panic was almost suffocating. I dove into the stairwell, sliding down a few steps, and slammed the door
Oh, thank
behind me
you.
as the footsteps thundered on the floor above. Then they stopped abruptly.
I pray to the
sat there
heavens
shaking
whenever
for
I
several
draw.
minutes, trying to catch my breath and convincing myself I had imagined it. But the sound of my own breathing and the echo of those steps made me feel insane. When the patrol finally arrived, I was pale, sweaty, and trembling.
I turned in my 2
We
weeks
walked the
notice.
building together, floor by floor, room by room, and the garage was completely empty. No sign of the intruder, no footprints, nothing. And when we checked the cameras, the footage from the time he appeared had been overwritten or corrupted, leaving a gap in the recording that made my skin crawl even more. I quit that job within a month.
Good.
Because of the fear, and partly because I couldn't handle walking the hallways alone anymore. Especially when the garage was empty and the wind outside made the building creak. Because every shadow and every noise
Oh, okay, it just doesn't
reminded
like
me
me.
of him walking behind me, just out of sight, waiting. Even years later, I get anxious in parking garages or office buildings at night, and I still check over my shoulder more than I should, thinking I might see that long coat rounding a corner, hearing those wet footsteps behind me again. And I know that what I experienced wasn't
Oh, thank
supernatural.
you.
It wasn't a
means
faceless
a
ghost or a
lot.
phantom. It was a real person, a stalker, and the thought that he had been inside that building following me, hiding just out of view, and that I might never know how he got in or what he wanted, is something that still haunts me every time I think about that night.
Why would you be a security guard? I can't.
Has Kyrie texted you back?
Ah,
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it either.
Matt
Can we
texted?
skip? Thanks.
This happened to me a few days ago. As a matter of fact, it was my first night of training as a mobile security guard.
And then I quit.
Before I tell you my story, just want to clarify that a mobile security guard is primarily a security guard that drives around in a vehicle and does site visitation where the client needs security. In this case, it's the GTA of Toronto, but this incident took place at a nearby pharmacy/medical clinic in Mississauga. It was my first night as a trainee, and my supervisor was a nice person, showing me around on how to conduct patrols, write reports, disarm fire alarms, etc. Usually, if an alarm occurs, dispatch notifies us through the radio and asks us to attend the site where the alarm is happening. However, we arrived at the medical clinic in Mississauga to conduct a regular perimeter patrol, which also meant there was no alarm. We arrived on the site around 1:15 a.m. to make sure everything was normal. But as we got out of the vehicle and approached the building, something was terribly wrong. For one, the underground parking garage was left open, and two, the front door of the building
You're
was
gonna make
busted
me
open.
cry.
My supervisor then said,
I'm serious. That is really
"Look,
sweet.
how
Thank
is
you
this
guys. I do
possible? If
try.
somebody broke in, the alarm should be on." I did not know how to react.
And I love
to
watching
this,
you
as
guys,
this was
like,
my first time at the site.
Your art has
According to my
improved so much
supervisor,
too, and I
this
love
was
your
a new
guys' art
contract with the
styles. It's
security
so
company I
cool.
worked for got. We stepped in the building cautiously, but all of a sudden my supervisor says, "Look at the elevator. It's going up at different levels." Sure enough, he was not kidding, as the elevator was moving from G1, 2, 3, and stopped at level 4.
What the
which was
hell?
the very top. I asked my supervisor if he thinks someone was in here. He immediately nods and pulls out his baton. At that very moment, I was feeling sick to my stomach and started breathing heavily. At that point, I hated my job and did not want to be there. He immediately went inside
At
the
that point,
elevator
I
and
just wanted to
straight the
fucking
top
leave.
level. I was getting a bad feeling, and some adrenaline was rushing through my body before the elevator door was about to open. As we were going up each level, I was thinking to myself, like, what if something happens, or whoever this person or thing is might not
You're
leave without a
welcome.
fight, and possibly even charge at us as the elevator door opens.
Sorry, I'm also quiet because the
However,
story's
luckily,
like
as we
got me in a
arrived at the
chokehold,
fourth floor, no one was in front of us, but it was extremely dark.
and I'm like locked
Therefore,
in.
we turned on the lights and started investigating the rooms of that floor. My supervisor told me to stick with him, as even he was feeling uncomfortable. He said, I quote, "Make sure you stick with me and get ready to bust this fu-" Luckily, no one was there, so we were very
I love
shocked
the
and
story.
didn't know what was happening, until we heard footsteps going down the stairwell. My supervisor and I were about to open the door to the stairs and chase whoever it was inside. However, just then, The footsteps stopped, and it was very quiet. We could only hear each other's breathing. What my supervisor said next to dispatch is something I will never forget. It's
Oh,
still
God.
rattling around in my head. A4, call C25, go ahead. Dispatch, we need immediate backup. Please be advised, someone's in the building with us, and they're hiding downstairs, possibly armed, and waiting for us to come towards them so he or they can ambush us. Dispatch then tells us to stay where we are and not approach the suspect or whoever it was downstairs, as backup will be arriving shortly. At that point, my supervisor started panicking, and it just made the situation even worse. I
Really?
mean, he should be the one to lead and not feel worried. Then
Yeah.
again, I don't blame him. This experience was overwhelming and horrifying for me. Now, my supervisor is only a couple of years older than me, so I preferably call him bro instead of sir or whatever.
Hi, bro.
Bro, just don't worry. I'm sure backup will be arriving shortly, I told him. You might be wondering why we could not hit the exit and run for it. Well, you see, the suspect is on the ground floor, which means he could be anywhere. So with the elevator making noises,
My feet and my
he or
hands
she
are...
could be alarmed and immediately stand in front of the elevator, blocking our way. The suspect could approach us by coming upstairs, but I guess that he or they figured we could attack him by surprise. So maybe that's why he was quietly waiting at the corner for us downstairs. 15 minutes later, we heard the door open. It was our senior supervisor, and his voice echoed out, "Security." My supervisor radioed him and said, "Sir, we're upstairs. Be careful, there's someone downstairs." A few minutes later, the senior supervisor met us upstairs and told us to come investigate with him. Therefore, we did. But we looked everywhere downstairs and then each floor and found no one. As we were at the third floor, scanning each room and bathroom to see if the person was there, we heard the front door open and heard footsteps running outside.
Oh, shit.
We were not fast enough to see who it was, because by the time we got to the ground floor, the suspect was gone. Both my supervisor and I were in shock, because we looked everywhere and did not find anyone. Either that person was in a very good hiding spot, or that medical clinic center was haunted. I don't think I'll ever know. But this was by far the most horrific experience of my life. And coming this weekend, I'll be there again for site visitation, but this time alone, as I'll be trained by them.
Ew. I'd quit. Hell no. Also, thank you guys for being so freaking sweet. I know there's only 4 people watching right now, but it makes me feel good, okay? And I love your guys' art too. I love being friends with artists. I love having other artists to collab with and just talk to, and I don't know, it makes me feel loved. Also, God, that picture, I'm glad I'm not showing you all the stuff on YouTube, but some of these thumbnails are terrifying. Lord. Okay, 3 disturbing true hidden camera stories? Yes. You two, we're 3 of my main, we're 3 of my main inspiration. Shut up. Oh, Leah, I'm actually gonna cry. Stop.
I was 22 when this happened. At the time, I had just graduated college, I was between jobs, and doing odd work around my small town, like babysitting, cleaning houses, running errands, basically anything that paid cash. A woman I'd dog sat for in the past recommended me to a friend of her neighbors, a man named Craig. He called me one afternoon and explained he'd be traveling for a week and needed someone to stay in his house to look after his golden retriever, Max. He said Max was an anxious dog who did best with someone actually staying overnight rather than just coming by to feed him, and the pay he offered was a little more than usual, so I agreed. I met Craig 2 days later. He was in his late 40s, tall, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a windbreaker. Nothing about him seemed strange at first. Maybe a little overly friendly, but not creepy. His house was on the edge of town, tucked back in a wooded area. The place itself was nice, but a little dated, like with beige carpets and floral curtains. Craig walked me through everything. How often to let Max out, where the spare key was, which fridge items I could use. He told me I could stay in the guest bedroom, which was right off the living room on the first floor. I started the job on a Monday. The first 2 nights were normal. I watched TV in the living room, then took Max on his evening walks, and then slept in the guest room with him curled up at the foot of the bed. It was the third night when things went wrong. I had been sitting on the bed, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed something odd. On the dresser across from the bed, next to a small lamp, was a digital alarm clock. I remembered thinking it didn't match the rest of the room. It was newer looking, black plastic with a bright blue LED display, but everything else in the room looked like it belonged in the early 2000s.
You're not, like, listen.
I don't know what made
I was
me
gonna say,
look
Sam, is it
closer.
wrong? Your anthro
Maybe it was
art
the way
is
the light
so
from the lamp
good.
hit
It's
the
so
front of it.
cute.
As I leaned in, I noticed a small, perfectly round black pinhole above the numbers. At first, I thought it was just a sensor, but then I noticed the angle. The tiny hole was pointed directly at the bed. My stomach
Ew.
jumped. I'd read stories about hidden cameras and alarm clocks before, but I'd never actually seen one in person. My mind started racing. I picked it up, and it was heavier than I expected. There was a faint buzzing sound inside.
'Cause
like
it's a
tiny fan.
camera.
I turned it toward me and stared right into the pinhole. That was when Max, who had been lying by the door, suddenly lifted his head and started whining. From somewhere else in the house, not the front door, but deeper inside, I heard the unmistakable sound of a door closing. Every hair on my body stood up. Craig wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday.
Oh.
It was only Wednesday night.
My God.
I froze, holding the clock in my hands. My heart pounding so hard
I
it almost hurt.
would die.
I heard slow footsteps on the hallway carpet. I quickly set the clock back down and moved to the door, locking it just as the footsteps stopped outside. Then Craig's voice came through, calm but slightly out of breath. He was saying he had left something in there the last time he was home and needed me to open the door. I couldn't speak. A moment later, he said it wasn't what I thought, claiming it was a motion sensor for the dog and that he hadn't wanted to freak me out by mentioning it.
Uh-huh.
I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth. He told me to come out and that we would talk like adults. I
No.
didn't respond. His knocking turned into pounding. He yelled at me to open the door, with his voice no longer calm, but sharp and angry. Max started barking and jumping at the door, which only made Craig sound more agitated. I glanced
Even
at
the dog is like,
was
hell no,
trying
man.
to climb out, but it was locked. So I fumbled with the hatch, my hand shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to open it. Behind me, Craig was still pounding, now shouting that if I didn't open the door, he would get the key to the room and call the cops and tell them I broke into his house. I need to hear more. I shoved the
What?
window open, climbed out awkwardly, and dropped onto the grass outside. Max scrambled after me, his nails clicking on the window ledge, but he ultimately gave up and didn't jump out. I ran through the side yard and down the gravel driveway until I reached the road. My phone was in my pocket, and I called my mom, who lived 15 minutes away.
Mom.
I told her to come get me right now. By the time she pulled up, I was hiding behind a cluster of mailboxes. Craig's house was nowhere in sight from that spot, but I kept looking over my shoulder. I stayed at my mom's for the rest of the night. The next morning, I blocked Craig's number and called a lawyer. The lawyer said that without physical proof, like a recording of the camera or the device itself, pressing charges would be difficult. Even if the clock was a hidden camera, Craig could claim it was a harmless motion sensor. Without evidence, it would be my word against his.
Oh, I hate
I
that.
wanted to go back and take a picture of it, but my lawyer strongly advised against returning to the house alone.
He's like, how about you don't do
The idea of
that?
seeing Craig again made my skin crawl. So nothing happened to him. I never got paid for the 3 nights I stayed there. The woman who had recommended me to him stopped responding to my messages, and I never found out if she knew anything about him.
Oh,
For
probably.
weeks afterward, I had nightmares about waking up to see a camera lens watching me from across the room. I
Oh my
started checking every
God.
clock,
I won't be able to
smoke
sleep
detector,
tonight.
and picture frame in my own apartment. And I still think about that moment. I looked into that little black lens, and the sound of the door closing somewhere behind me, in a house I thought was empty, which says to me he may have been in the house the whole time, watching me through that camera.
I know. Just know.
I booked the Airbnb in late September, a week before my girlfriend Emma and I planned to spend a few days visiting her sister in a small town about 3 hours from where we lived. And I picked it because it was cheap, close enough to her sister's place, had good reviews, and looked cozy in the listing photos. An old 2-story house with a wraparound porch, warm yellow lighting in the living room, hardwood floors that gave it a kind of storybook feeling, and one small detail in the description that I didn't think much of at the time, which was a note telling guests that the basement storage room was off limits. I'd stayed in places where
Oh,
the
that's
owners kept
awesome.
certain areas locked. It's pretty common for them to store personal belongings somewhere, so it barely registered as important. But when we pulled into the driveway just before sunset on the first evening, the place looked a little more weathered than in the photos.
Legit crying,
And there was
just
something
sobbing.
about the fact that it stood alone with only one other house in sight, a good distance away, surrounded by dark tree lines and a narrow road leading in, that it made me think twice.
I didn't even like
Hope's
listen to
house
half of
was
this.
waiting for us on the porch before we'd even gotten out
Also,
of
I
the
listen to
car.
the true crime to sleep too.
He was
Also,
tall, but slightly
sometimes.
hunched, maybe in his
But,
late
like,
50s, with thin gray
This
hair
is all my
pulled deep over
fears
his
put
head.
into one, so
He
my
was
brain's
dressed in
like,
a perfectly pressed flannel shirt tucked into
not
his
tonight.
jeans. He smiled, but it was the kind of
I'm
smile
gonna need
that
kitten
didn't quite
videos.
reach his eyes. It made me think of Mr. Beast, a little too practiced. His eyes lingered on us just a bit too long. when we
Not
shook
Mr.
hands.
Beast.
And though his voice was friendly enough, there was a subtle firmness to it when he began showing us around. He led us through the front door into a hallway that smelled faintly of dust and something sweet, almost like candle wax, though I didn't see any candles. The living room had a big couch facing an old television. The kitchen looked clean but dated, and when we went upstairs, the single bedroom had a large bed under a ceiling fan and a small dresser with a mirror. Then, when he came back down, Alan stopped at a door near the kitchen and tapped a heavy padlock hanging from it. He told us in a more commanding tone that that door stayed locked, that it was his storage space, and that there was no reason for us to go down there for anything.
Okay, I
He
don't know
didn't
why you're
smile
so
this
like.
time. He just moved on to point out where the extra towels were in the bathroom.
Okay,
before
brother.
wishing us a pleasant stay and heading out the front door. After he left, Emma and I unpacked, made some tea, and sat outside on the porch for a while, listening to crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the trees.
Oh my god, yes,
By
please.
the time we got into bed, the quiet was almost
I'm so glad that,
unnerving.
like.
No traffic, no distant voices.
Sorry, this is
just
distracting
pure
me.
silence.
I'm so glad I can inspire
Sometime after
people.
midnight,
You all inspire
I
me.
thought I heard a faint, dull thud from below us. I paused and listened for more, but it didn't come again. So I told myself it was probably the house settling.
It's the
The
house
next
settling.
morning, we got breakfast in town, explored a few shops, and met up with Emma's sister for lunch. We stayed out until just after dark, then went back to the house to make dinner and watch a movie. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to use the bathroom. As I headed back toward the bedroom, I froze halfway up the stairs when I heard a dragging sound from the basement.
Oh
Like
god.
something heavy being pulled across a rough floor.
It's a body.
It lasted maybe 5 seconds, stopped, and then started again. My first thought was that maybe Alan had come back for something.
My
He had
first
told us
thought
he
is
wouldn't be around
death.
at all during our stay. I stood there listening until it stopped, then went into the bedroom and asked Emma in a whisper if she was awake.
Yes,
She said she
exactly.
was, and that she heard it too. We stayed awake for another half hour, but the sound didn't return. The second night was worse. We'd spent the day hiking and were exhausted, but sometime around 2:30 a.m., the noises started again. Not dragging this time, but footsteps. 4 or 5 in a row, then a pause, then 3 more.
God, I hope
Each
it's just a
pause
ghost in
lasted long
this.
enough to make me think that
Well, it's
whoever
not,
or
it's
whatever it
fucking
was listening.
creepers.
Emma whispered that she thought she heard breathing between the steps. My heart was pounding, but I didn't want to get up and risk making a noise.
They're
So
still
we just
racing
lay
out my
there,
window.
eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling until morning. By the third morning, the atmosphere in the house felt different. We still went out and did touristy things, but whenever we came back, it was like a heaviness settled over the rooms. I decided to check the
I
basement
just
door during the
would
day.
get somewhere else.
It was still locked, but when I leaned closer, I thought I could smell something faint and unpleasant, like stale, damp air mixed with a hint of something sour.
Oh no, it is a body.
Began earlier, around midnight. First came a faint metallic clinking, like metal tapping against something hard. Then the footsteps
He's
again,
eating a
going
snack.
on and off for nearly an hour. Emma barely spoke to me before bed. The fourth night was the breaking point.
Emma was like, fuck
Getting ready
no.
for bed, Emma stopped brushing her hair and asked me if the smoke detector above the bed looked strange.
Oh.
First, I didn't see it, but when I stood on the bed to get a closer look, I saw
Oh,
a small, perfectly round black dot in the middle that
no.
was shinier than the surrounding plastic. A bad feeling hit me.
Oh my
immediately. I grabbed
god.
a chair, unscrewed the detector, and inside was a small battery-operated camera with its green light on. Emma sat on the bed, pale and silent, while I
Oh, I
searched
would
the
just
room
leave.
and found another small lens poking through a hole in the wall.
I would
near
take a
the dresser
picture.
mirror, both aimed directly at the bed. That was the end of it. We shoved our stuff into our bags without bothering to fold anything.
Yeah.
We left the house without speaking to the host.
Oh, hell
Went into the
no.
nearest gas station and called the police. 2 officers met us there. We explained everything, the noises, the cameras, the locked basement, and they followed us back to the house. The front door was unlocked. Technically, we were still allowed in the place as we paid for 4 days. The police followed us inside and seized all the evidence, including the cameras, I assume the memory cards, and any recording equipment they could find. They also took our statement in detail, asking if any strange events
Grippers.
took place during our stay. That's when we mentioned hearing weird noises both nights from the basement. When we showed them the basement door, we were shocked to see that it was now wide open, but it was pitch black down there. We told them that this door was locked before, and that the host was very sketchy about not going down there. So the officers went down the stairs to investigate. Moments later, we heard voices, raised voices. There
Oh,
was some kind of commotion going on down there, and it quickly became clear what was happening. The officers then called us down and asked if this was the host, and to our horror, it was Alan. He was apparently hiding in a closet in the basement. In this closet was a monitor, which we could only guess was being fed the footage from the basement.
oh
The
my
police seized this
God.
as well. Alan was placed under arrest almost immediately. He
Yeah.
was charged criminally by the state for criminal trespass and invasion of privacy. He
Good.
didn't have to testify in
Lord.
court or anything. The police just sent our statements to the prosecutor, I believe. Airbnb basically bribed us with a voucher in hopes that we wouldn't share our bad experience. We
Well,
took the voucher, obviously.
I
but
would.
That hasn't stopped us from telling people about this horrific experience. It's really been something that's had a lasting effect on Emma and I. We don't trust rentals or Airbnbs anymore, and lately just stick to hotels.
God, no. I drew hand feet, so I don't have to draw feet. Me. And no, I get it. I think feet are fucking strange. Your weird noises in my house and I'm home alone. I just loudly announced the weirdest threats. Me. I literally cuss at it. Or I literally just go, hello? Just don't mess with me, man. Just stay over there. We'll be okay.
My name is Joe, and this happened about a week ago. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate Eric. I didn't know him before moving in. We met through a Facebook housing group. He seemed normal enough when we first met to check the place out. He was quiet, polite, and kind of awkward, but not really in a bad way. At the time, I thought that would be a good thing because I wasn't looking for a best friend, just someone responsible enough to help pay rents and not trash the place.
Maybe you should find a best
The
friend.
first
I don't
couple of
know.
months, it was fine. We had opposite work schedules. I worked a regular 9-to-5 office job, and he worked at some warehouse in the late shift. Because of that, I barely saw him. Most of the time when I was leaving in the morning, his door would be shut, and at night when I came home, he was usually gone. We'd cross paths once or twice a week, usually just exchanging a few words in the kitchen or living room.
Hands are
It was
cooler.
nothing special, but it worked. Then I started noticing little things in my room that made me feel off. The first time it happened, I came home late and saw that my closet door was open. I usually keep it closed because I don't like seeing my clothes sticking out, but I figured maybe I had left it that way that morning. A few days later, I noticed my desk chair turned slightly toward the bed. I never sit in it that way.
Oh
I
no.
brushed it off and thought maybe I was just not paying attention. Still, it put a strange feeling in my stomach, like somebody had been in my room. One Saturday morning, I was cleaning. I wiped the shelves, dusted, and then started on the window. That's when I saw it. Up in the corner, where the wall met the ceiling, there was this little black dot. I thought it was maybe a screw or a hole in the wall, but when I got closer, I froze. It was a tiny camera, a small wireless camera pointed straight at my bed. My hand shook as I pulled it off the wall. It wasn't even hidden well, just stuck with a little piece of adhesive. It had a spot for a memory card, but the card was missing. I just stood there holding it, feeling sick. I thought about all the nights I had been in here sleeping, changing clothes, even being intimate with women. The only person who could have put it there was Eric. He was the only other one with access to my room. At that moment, he wasn't home. His door was closed and the apartment was quiet. I stood in the hallway, staring at his door with my heart pounding. I told myself not to do it, but curiosity won. I slowly turned
Why
the
would you
doorknob and
do
opened
it?
His room smelled stale, like old food and dirty laundry. The blinds were shut, and the room was dark, even though it was the middle of the day. His bed was unmade, and his desk was cluttered with papers, unopened mail, and change. I searched around a little, half expecting to find another camera or maybe recordings on his laptop, but there was nothing obvious. Just a messy room. I closed the door and went back to my room, but I couldn't get rid of the uneasiness.
No
I
shit.
decided to test him. I put the camera in my nightstand drawer under some socks. My plan was simple. If he came looking for it, then I'd know for sure it was him who planted it. For 2 nights, nothing happened. I still felt tense, but since there weren't any signs, I started to think that maybe I was overthinking the whole thing. Then came the 3rd night. I woke up at around 3 in the morning. At first, I wasn't sure why, but then I heard a noise. It was soft, like wood sliding against wood. Then I realized it was coming from right beside me, from my nightstand drawer.
Oh
I
my
opened my
god.
eyes a little, pretending to still be asleep.
Hi.
In the faint light coming through the blinds, I saw a figure. It was Eric. He was standing in my room, bent over my nightstand, rummaging through the drawer where I had hidden the camera. I felt my chest tighten and my heart beat so loud I was sure he could hear it. I stayed still, not knowing what to do. And then he stopped. He froze and just stood there, completely still. Slowly, he turned his head toward my bed. He was looking straight at me. For a moment, I thought maybe he wasn't sure if I was awake, but then he spoke. He said he knew I was awake. I felt ice run down my spine as he said
Oh.
that. Then he asked me what I had done with it. I sat up quickly, my fear turning to anger. I demanded to know why he put a camera in my room. He stared at me and told me it was because he thought I was stealing from him. I told him that was ridiculous, that it made no sense. I said he had aimed the camera at my bed and that it was one of the most sickest things I've ever seen. He tried to tell me he only wanted proof, but I didn't buy it. I told him he was lying and that he had been spying on me. We started yelling at each other. He kept repeating that I was overreacting. I told him I was going to report him to the landlord and maybe even the police. My voice was shaking with both fear and rage. Finally, I yanked open the drawer,
Ew,
grabbed
no, I
the
don't like
camera,
that.
and held it up. I told him that this was proof and that he was never getting it back. I stormed out of my room, walked into the kitchen, and threw the camera straight into the garbage, thinking I broke it. I told him to stay out of my room, and that the next day I would be telling the landlord everything. Eric stood in the hallway with his fists clenched, and he was just staring at me with a blank expression. Then he turned and walked back into his room without another word. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the couch with the TV on, too afraid he might come back into my room. Every little sound in the apartment made me jump. When the sun finally came up, I checked the garbage can. The camera was gone. That was a week ago. I told the landlord what happens. He said he would look into it, but so far nothing has been done. Eric still lives here. We don't speak, but the way he looks at me when we pass each other makes my skin crawl. It's like he's waiting for me to say or do something. I don't know why he really put the camera in my room. His excuse about me stealing was an obvious lie. I don't know what he wanted to record or what he was planning to do with it. And honestly, I don't want to know. But every night when I lay down in bed, I can't shake the feeling that there are more cameras hidden around me. Maybe in places I wouldn't think to check. I scoured the entire room and couldn't find any, but still, the thought does linger in my mind. Last night, I was awake late and heard footsteps come down the hallway and then stopped right outside my door. For over a minute, there was silence, except for slight cracks in the wood floor outside my door from the pressure of him standing there. He stood there like a creep for a couple of minutes, until I finally heard his footsteps move away from the door. I'm looking into moving out.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out if pressing charges for invasion of privacy or something is feasible, considering I didn't even think to take a picture of the camera or record the confrontation or anything. I don't even have any texts from him admitting to placing the camera there. I've got literally nothing. But anyway, wish me luck in this situation, because I'm not sure what the outcome will be.
Ugh. I'm terrified. I meant to stop like 10 minutes ago, the live stream, but I'm just gonna keep going because I'm in the zone. So let's listen to When the Police Can't Help. 3 disturbing true stories where police couldn't help, because that's gonna make me feel so safe and comfy at night. I'm not gonna be able to sleep.
This happened in the fall of 2021 when I was living alone in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. It was my first time ever living by myself, and even though I was technically an adult, 27, with a full-time job and a stable routine, I still had a lot of nerves about the idea.
Yeah,
I'd
because it's
just gone through a
terrifying.
rough breakup, and I thought the silence and solitude might help me process everything. The townhouse was part of a small row of identical units, kind of plain but clean and quiet, tucked away in a sleepy cul-de-sac just off a rural highway. The neighborhood had that sterile suburban vibe. Lots of beige vinyl siding, trimmed hedges, wind chimes, and mailboxes with family names stenciled on them. Mostly older folk, but a few young families. I didn't know any of my neighbors well, but I liked it that way. I kept to myself, but almost right away, I noticed one person who stood out from the rest. He lived 3 doors down, a tall, heavy-set man, probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a weird habit of standing outside his house at night, sometimes just pacing or smoking, sometimes doing nothing at all, just staring. I'd pull
Hold
into
on,
my
let me do
driveway
this
after
first.
work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he'd be, leaning against his porch rail, or just standing at the edge of his driveway, facing the street. He never waved, never smiled. He just stared. Even if I looked directly at him, I tried to ignore it. A couple of
don't like
times I
that
mentioned it
shadow
to
there.
friends or my mom, and they said maybe he was just a night owl or had insomnia, but there was something unsettling about him, like he was always watching but never participating. It wasn't just that he was there, it was the stillness. He didn't fidget or check his phone or shift his weight. He just stood there like a statue. I told myself not to be paranoid, but the more time passed, the more that
Ew.
gnawing feeling in my gut grew. Then the noises started. It was around mid-September when I first heard it. I had just gotten home from work after a long shift. I worked late hours managing inventory at a distribution center, and I usually got in around 10:30 p.m., exhausted, grabbing a bite to eat, and crashing. That night, I fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 2:37 a.m., I woke up to a sound I can only describe as metal scraping against wood. At first, I thought I had dreamed it, but then I heard it again. A long, slow creaking noise, like an old gate opening. My bedroom was on the first floor, at the back of the unit, and I had a sliding glass door with vertical blinds that led to a small, fenced-in backyard. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. There was a pause. Then I heard footsteps, soft crunching sounds, like someone walking slowly across gravel. My entire backyard was lined with decorative rock instead of grass, so you could hear every footstep clearly. These weren't animal sounds. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed. I didn't have a weapon, just a dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand, just in case, which at the time felt kind of ridiculous. I crouched by the edge of the window and peeked through the blinds. I couldn't see anything. The motion light wasn't on, which meant either they were out of range or had come in a different way. I dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm, asked for my address, and told me officers were en route. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. About 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through my front window. I got up, opened the door, and met the 2 officers outside. I explained everything, what I heard, what time it started. One of them walked around the back while the other stayed with me and asked a few questions. The officer in the yard came back and said the gate was closed and there were no signs of tampering, but said he'd write up a report just in case. They didn't see anyone. No footprints or damage. Basically no crime. One of them actually said, probably just a raccoon, and gave me a look that clearly said, "You're wasting our time."
Oh, shut up.
I didn't argue. They left after about 10 minutes.
I'm
I
so
didn't
sorry.
sleep
I
the rest of
depended
that
on you
night.
for help.
The next morning, I went outside to check the backyard myself. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a flat stone about the size of a paperback book, wedged under the bottom edge of the wooden fence gate. I hadn't noticed it before. The gate had a heavy spring that made it swing closed automatically, but the stone looked like it had been placed there specifically to stop it from closing all the way. It was subtle, like something someone would do if they wanted to come back later and slip in without making noise. I picked up the rock and tossed it across the yard. I called the police again and told them what I'd found. They told me they'd noted in the report, but again said there wasn't much they could do. I asked if they could talk to any of the neighbors or check for cameras. They said no.
Oh yeah, go to
unless the
sleep,
crime was
honey.
committed, they
Please.
couldn't investigate.
And thank you so
Felt like
much
I
for
was losing
watching.
my
It really
mind.
did cheer me up.
2 nights later,
Go
it
get
escalated.
rest.
At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke up again, this time to the sound of my back door handle turning. The handle rattled gently at first, like someone testing it, then a harder jiggle, like someone trying to open it. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. I couldn't see anything through the blinds, but I could feel someone standing on the other side. My mouth went dry. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called the police again. While I waited, I crouched in the hallway, out of view. I didn't have a gun or dog, just that stupid kitchen knife. My motion light clicked on, and through a tiny gap in the blinds, I saw a shadow move across the window. It was a man. He didn't run or try to hide. He just stood there. The same 2 officers showed up again. This time, they actually found footprints in the gravel, big ones, heading right up to the door. But again, they said since no entry had been made, there wasn't enough to go on.
Oh my
They
god.
promised to patrol the area more often and told me to keep my doors locked. The next day, I installed a camera. It was one of those mid-range Wi-Fi security cams. I set one up above the back door and another above the front porch. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the live feed on my phone. 2:14 a.m. came and went. Nothing happened. Then, at 2:23, the back camera triggered. A man stepped into frame. He walked in through the gate like he knew exactly how to move to avoid the motion sensor until the last second. He was tall and broad, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up, jeans, and gloves. He walked up to the door, looked up directly at the camera, and smiled. A slow,
Oh,
stretched out
oh
grin. Then he backed
no.
up, still staring, and disappeared into the dark. I called the police again, and they came back, watched the clip, and admitted that yes, it was unsettling. But since he didn't break in, didn't damage property, and didn't appear to be armed, there was still allegedly nothing.
I
they
love
could
how they're
do.
like, yeah, you have to
Didn't
like
even ask
basically
if I thought
die
the street
first
should check
before
the
we
doorbell
care.
can. I begged them. They said their hands were tied. That night,
Thanks,
I packed
guys.
a bag and slept at a hotel. When I came back the next day, I found 4 muddy handprints on the glass door. 2 high up and 2 low, like someone had crouched down and just rested their hands there for a while, staring in. I moved out a week later. I broke my lease and forfeited my deposit. I didn't care. I couldn't stay there another night. The final straw was the note I found wedged in my mailbox the day I left. It was handwritten in small cramped letters on lined notebook paper. It said, "The cops leave, but I don't."
Oh
one last
my
report.
god.
The officer I spoke to
Well,
that night
technically,
was
since he didn't
genuinely
come
disturbed
kill
by the
you, it's
They promised they'd
fine.
do a wellness check on the neighborhood, but it was too late. I never went back. About a month later, I got a message on Facebook from a girl named Kayla. She said she was the new tenant who had moved into the unit after me. Her message said, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you used to live here. Did you ever have someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard?
Oh
I keep
god.
hearing footsteps at night.
Move
Last
out.
night, someone knocked on the glass door around 2 a.m. and just stood there." I didn't reply. I didn't want to know what happened next.
I would. I'd tell her to get out of there.
Look, if you're sick of always having to pay more to get the features that you need to grow your business,
God.
I work for a property preservation company. Basically, we handle foreclosed homes, securing them, cleaning them out, winterizing them, sometimes even boarding them up if there's been vandalism. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well. For the most part, it's quiet. You spend a lot of time alone in houses that used to belong to people who are long gone. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's just boring. But every once in a while, you get a house that feels unsettling. This happened in 2020 when I was assigned to clear out a property in a rural part of upstate New York. It was one of those dying places, only one gas station, half the businesses shuttered, roads cracked and overgrown. The house itself was a small, one-story place off a dirt road, surrounded by overgrown brush and woods on 3 sides. No other homes nearby, just trees and silence.
I kind of like this a
According
little
to the
bit more.
file, the house had been foreclosed after the owner, an elderly woman, passed away, and no heirs had stepped forward to claim the estate. The utilities had been shut off for over a year. Our job was to catalog any remaining property, empty it out, and secure it for winter. I drove up on a Monday morning around 9 a.m. with a small box truck and all my gear. From the outside, the house looked intact. Windows closed, door locked, roof fine. Just a lot of weeds and vines climbing up the porch. I had to shove the front door open because it had swollen in the frame, but once inside, everything looked pretty standard. It was dusty, stale air and faded furniture. Then my work phone rang. It startled me because I had no signal out there. I'd already checked and noticed I had no bars, but the phone buzzed anyway. There was no number on the caller ID. It just said unknown caller. I answered, and there was nothing. Just a low crackling sound, like static. I said hello twice, then hung up. Chalked it up to a glitch. I got to work. I always start with photos, documenting every room, every item. The living room was cluttered with old furniture, lace curtains, some framed paintings. It reminded me of my grandma's house. Heavy furniture, doilies, porcelain figures. The hallway had a smell. Not rot, more like mildew and dust, and something faintly metallic. There were 3 bedrooms. One had been stripped bare, except for a sagging mattress on the floor. Another was clearly a sewing room, with thread spools everywhere and a dusty machine on the desk. I took a closer look, and there was a corkboard filled with old newspaper clippings. They were mostly obituaries. Dozens of them, all clipped out with scissors and pinned carefully to the board. No names I recognized, all local. I moved on. In the master bedroom, there was a rotary phone on the nightstand. I remember stopping and staring at it for a second because I hadn't seen one in years. It was off-white, yellowed with age, with a long coiled cord. The kind of phone that would never ring again because the line had been cut long ago. I moved on to the bathroom. That's when my phone rang again. It said unknown caller again. This time, I hesitated. I picked it up, stepped out into the hallway, and answered. Again, nothing. But this time, after about 5 seconds, I heard a whisper. Very soft, so quiet I could barely make it out. It said, "Don't answer the phone in the bedroom." I
Okay.
went dead. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding. The house was dead silent. I checked the windows, all closed. Nobody was outside, and there was no sign of forced entry. My first thought was that someone had pranked me. It's what anyone would think. Maybe one of the other crew guys was messing with me. But no one else knew I was there that early. And again, I had no signal. I checked my phone. 1 bar, then nothing. Like it flickered in and out of existence. I tried calling my supervisor, but the call failed. I decided to finish the job quickly. I started boxing up loose items in the living room. Books, figurines, dusty glassware. But the whole time, I felt off. Like I was being watched. I kept glancing toward the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing down there. Then the phone rang a 3rd time.
What the fuck do you want?
But not my phone. The rotary phone in the bedroom. I heard it from across the house. A shrill, mechanical ring that echoed through the rooms. That phone should have been dead. The line was disconnected. No dial tone and no service. But yet it rang, like an old-fashioned bell. I walked slowly down the hallway toward the bedroom, phone still in my hand. It rang again and again. I stepped into the doorway. The phone sat on the nightstand, the receiver trembling slightly with each ring. There was no chance I was picking up that phone. The rings eventually stopped. I backed out of the room. I wanted to leave, but part of my job was securing the property. I still had to check the basement. I almost said screw it, but something made me keep going. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I just didn't want to admit how scared I was. The basement door was in the kitchen. I opened it slowly. The stairs creaked as I stepped down, flashlight in hand. I smelled mold and something like rust. There were shelves along the wall, filled with old paint cans and some broken furniture. In the back corner, there was a small table. On it, a cordless phone, a newer model. It was gray plastic and covered in dust, and next to it, a stack of yellowed notebooks. I picked one up and flipped through it. Each page had a name and a date and a short sentence. Lena H., July 3rd, 2019. Rang once, didn't answer. Carl M., September 12th, 2019. Picked up, warned him. There was more like this, dozens of entries. I dropped the notebook, and my heart felt like it completely dropped out of my body as I looked around the basement, fearing I wasn't alone down there, and that someone was watching me from any corner in the darkness. I rushed back up the stairs, looking behind me the whole time, heart in my throat. I didn't finish the job. I drove straight back to the office and turned in my report. I didn't tell them everything. I just said the property was unsafe and possibly had squatters or interference. They reassigned the job to another crew. 2 days later, I got a text from one of the other guys, Mark. He'd gone out there that morning to finish the job. I hadn't told him specifically what happened. His message said, the phone in the bedroom with no service rang while I was in there. What the hell? I called his work cell phone immediately, and he told me he didn't answer the phone in the house because he was too freaked out. The next day, Mark apparently quit without notice and never returned to work. He's
He
not
was
dead or
smart.
anything. I admittedly looked him up on Facebook eventually, and he posted stuff since then, but I never spoke to him again. I don't know what else he saw in the house, but it must have been something bad enough for him to want to distance himself from this job. My boss did call the police to report the potential squatters after Mark quit, but they found nobody inside of the house. Everything about that house, from its location to its eerie, dilapidated interior, to the phone calls to my cell phone, and that voice on that line, and that damn house phone ringing. It's like I found myself in a legitimate horror movie. I swear it had to be one of two things: an elaborate sick prank or an equally elaborate trap.
That wasn't scary. Joking, that actually was a pretty, no.
This happened in 2019. I was in my late 20s, living alone in a rental house in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. It wasn't a fancy place, just an older one-story house with creaky floors, thin walls, and a small backyard. But it was cheap, and it came with a basement, which I used to store extra furniture and tools and stuff. I moved in that spring, and for the first few months, nothing strange happened. The house had its quirks. Some pipes rattled when you turned on the shower. There was this one kitchen cabinet that always swung open on its own, but nothing unusual for a place that old. The only part I didn't like was the basement. The door was in the hallway next to the bathroom. It was heavy and stuck a little when you opened it. The light switch for the basement was actually halfway down the stairs, which meant you had to walk down a few steps in total darkness before you could reach it. The first time I went down there, I honestly felt weird. Not scared exactly, but uneasy. The single bulb didn't do much to light the corners, and the whole place smelled like old wood. But I didn't have any reason to be down there for long, so I stored my things, shut the door, and didn't think much of it. That changed around late October. I had just gotten home from work. I'm a night shift security guard, so I usually get home around 3 a.m. I was heading to the bathroom before bed when I heard something.
Oh, hell
Sounded
no.
like a faint knock. 3 soft taps. It came from behind the basement door. I froze in place. At first, I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was the pipes or the house settling. But as I stood there, holding my breath, I heard it again. 3 distinct knocks. I backed up a few steps and stared at the door, and then I waited. There was just silence now. I remember whispering to myself, "It's just the house," even though I didn't really believe it. I didn't open the door. I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and stayed awake for the next 2 hours, listening. Eventually, I fell asleep with the TV on. The next morning, I checked the basement. I opened the door, went down the stairs, and turned on the light. Everything was exactly the way I left it. No signs of anyone having been down there. No footprints in the dust, no broken windows. I convinced myself it had to be the house shifting, or maybe a small animal that got in somehow. I moved on, but a few nights later, it happened again. This time, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard the knock.
Oh,
Not
hell
three
no.
taps this time, just one, but it was loud, and it was close, like someone had used their knuckles hard against the basement door. I opened the bathroom door and looked. The basement door was closed. Nothing moved. The hallway was quiet. I walked over and put my ear against the wood. At first, I heard nothing, but then, very faint, I heard what sounded like breathing. Slow, steady, as if someone was standing on the other side, waiting. I backed away and went to my room, again locking the door. I called my landlord. I told him something strange was going on in the basement, that I thought someone had maybe gotten into the house somehow. He seemed skeptical, but said he'd come by to check it out. He arrived in the morning. We both went down into the basement together. He looked around, checked the windows, the walls, even the foundation. Nothing was damaged or broken. No signs of a break-in or animals. I didn't say anything. I couldn't explain what I was hearing, and I didn't want to sound crazy. For the next week, things were quiet. I started to think that maybe I was just overtired or imagining things. I was working too much after all. But then, one night around 2 a.m., I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard the basement door creak. Not a knock or slam, but a creak, like it was slowly swinging open. I sat up straight and turned off the volume. I could hear it. The slow, grinding creak of the hinges moving. I got up and peeked down the hallway, and the basement door was wide open. I hadn't opened it in over a week. I hadn't even touched it. I grabbed a flashlight and slowly walked toward it. I didn't have a weapon, but I had no choice. I had to know what was going on. I stood at the top of the stairs and shined the light down. The basement was pitch black. The bulb wasn't on. I reached around the corner and flicked the switch. Nothing. It was dead. The bulb must have burned out. That's when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. They weren't rushing, they were slow, but they were 100% footsteps. I backed away. My hands were shaking. I slammed the door shut and held the handle tight. For a moment, I felt the pressure of something on the other side, like it was leaning against the door. Then it stopped. I locked the door and called the police. I told them someone was in my basement. They showed up about 10 minutes later, and 2 officers cleared the house and went down into the basement. I stood in the front yard, waiting, and after what felt like forever, they came back up. They said they didn't find anyone. No signs of forced entry or anyone hiding. Nothing was even disturbed. One of them even tried to laugh it off, asking if I'd been watching scary movies. I knew what I heard. After they left, I didn't go back inside right away. I just stood there, staring at that house. Finally, I went back in, locked every door and window, and stayed up until the sun came up. That morning, I bought a padlock and installed it on the basement door. I didn't care if it was allowed or not. I needed it. For the next month, the basement stayed quiet. No sounds or knocks or anything. I almost let myself relax. Then one night, I got home from work and noticed the basement door was open. Not just unlocked, the padlock was lying on the floor, broken. The door itself was slightly ajar. I hadn't touched that door in weeks. I stood there, staring at it, and for the first time, I realized something. Every time this had happened, every noise and every knock, it had always happened at night when I was alone. I did not go down. I couldn't. I packed a bag, left the house, and stayed at a friend's place for a few days. When I came back, I literally nailed the basement door shut. I even wedged a chair against the door. I didn't care if the landlord got mad. I just couldn't look at that door anymore. A few nights later, around 3 a.m., I was laying in bed, and I heard a sound that I still can't explain. It was a voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even someone speaking. Like the barely audible sound of the rumble of someone's vocal cords. It came from somewhere beneath the floorboards, directly under my bed. That was it. I called the police again. They showed up, did their search, and nothing turned up again. So I packed everything, minus the stuff in the basement, and I left. I didn't even wait for the lease to end. I don't know what was in that basement. I don't want to know. All I can say is that sometimes when I lie awake at night in my new apartment, I think about all this, and I wonder if I'd waited just a little longer, what would have come up those steps?
Lord, okay. Jesus. Well, now that I'm thoroughly freaked out, uh, I'm gonna pause here because my phone's literally about to die. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. I hope you guys have a good evening or night or day, wherever you are. And I'll see you later. Bye-bye.